Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the March 2021 Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review virtual meeting. As of now, we are streaming live on channel 10, and we're continuing to stream on the city's streaming channels. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff, and I'll be moderating tonight's meeting on the virtual side of things. Before I hand things over to Carl Schwartz, our chair, I'm going to go over a few guidelines and housekeeping tips to make sure that tonight's meeting runs smoothly for everybody involved. So first, for everybody who might be watching from home, I'm going to introduce the meeting participants who are online right now. First, we have Carl Schwartz, the chair of the BAR. We're also joined by Brett Gastinger, vice chair. Other BAR members include Tim Moore, Jody Lehendro, Sherry Lewis, Ron Bailey. Is James on yet? No, James isn't on yet. Andy McClure, and our newest member, Robert Edwards. We're also joined by Jeff Werner, who is my colleague and city staff. Throughout the meeting, applicants and other participants will join the meeting as necessary. For members of the public who are on the call right now, who are interested in providing public comment, there are several places in the agenda where you can speak. At the beginning of the meeting, we allow time for comments from the public for items not on the agenda. Then, before the BAR deliberates on each individual application, we allow time for public comment. In order to provide comment, we ask that you register for the meeting if you haven't already, and then you'll become an attendee. And then when we get to the comment portion of the agenda, you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature, and I'll unmute you. Then our timer will begin and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Let's see, for applicants who are currently online already, like members of the public, you're in the meeting as an attendee. But when your project comes up on the agenda for review, I'll promote you to a panelist, and then you'll have mute and unmute capabilities and we can see you with video. And when I promote you from attendee to panelist, you'll briefly be booted out of the meeting, but then you'll automatically come back in as panelist. Also for applicants, during the staff and applicant presentations for each project, I'll be sharing my screen to scan through pages of your application that you submitted for visual aid. While the BAR deliberates, I'm happy to share my screen again to reference specific pages or drawings. So please, if you want me to show a specific image or specific page, just give me a verbal command to direct to the page number. And also, like we've done for the past meetings, we'll have short periodic breaks as needed, and our chair, Carl, will direct us when a break is necessary. With that, it's time for me to hand things over to our chair, Carl Schwartz, but throughout the meeting, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.
Welcome to this regular monthly meeting, the Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review. Staff will introduce each item, followed by the applicant's presentation, which should not exceed 10 minutes. I will then ask for questions from the public, followed by questions from the BAR. After questions are closed, I'll ask for comments from the public. For each application, members of the public are allowed to each allowed 3 minutes to ask questions and 3 minutes to offer comments. Speakers shall identify themselves and provide their address. Comments should be limited to the BAR's purview, that is regarding only the exterior aspects of a project. Following the BAR's discussion and prior to taking action, the applicant will have up to 3 minutes to respond. Thank you for participating. Yeah, and I guess we, just for, sorry, I'm losing it. We'll go on to matters from the public not on the agenda. Please note that this also includes any item on the consent agenda that you wish to speak about. So these are 414 East Main Street, 1001 West Main Street, 301 5th Street Southwest, and 64 University Avenue. If you have any comments for these consent agenda items or anything else that's not on the agenda, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
We have 17 attendees, and I'm looking at the list, but I'm not seeing any raised hands yet.
Great. So we have the consent agenda. With the consent agenda are the minutes from November 17th, as well as those 4 items I just mentioned. We do have some revised approvals embedded in those items. So for 414 East Main Street, the revised approval would say, having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the alterations to the rear elevation at 414 East Main Street satisfy the BRS criteria and are compatible with this property and other properties in the downtown ADC district. The BAR approves the application as submitted with the condition that any future exterior lighting, if LED, the lamping will be dimmable, have a color temperature not to exceed 3000 K, and a color rendering index not less than 80, preferably not less than 90. For 301 5th Street Southwest, the revised motion for approval is, having considered the standards set forth in the city code, including ADC district guidelines, I move to find that the proposed addition and site work at 301 5th Street Southwest satisfies the BAR's criteria, is compatible with this IPP property, and the BAR approves the application as submitted with the following conditions. 2 entrance doors of the west elevation will be wood and with a design similar to that shown. The insulated glass in the windows will have internal spacer bars aligned with the applied grills. Shutters are wood or composite material, not vinyl or metal. And for any future exterior lighting, if LED, the lamping will be dimmable, have a color temperature not to exceed 3000 K, and a color rendering index not less than 80, preferably not less than 90. So
I'd like to pull 301 5th Street from the consent agenda.
Okay. I should have remembered that, and I wouldn't have had to read all that. I'm sorry. Do we have a motion to approve the other items?
I just have one question before a motion. Why the aside about LED lighting? Because I mean, somebody could put a sodium vapor lamp or something like that in, which is equally inappropriate. Just saying. You know, there are plenty of really bad lighting solutions that aren't LED. I can see some from my house.
That's fine. In fact, when I put that in there, I was wondering. So we could just simply, from those, eliminate LED reference and just say lighting.
In general, yep, I agree. Thank you, Jeff.
Right. So consider those motions amended a second time.
Yes, so I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with that minor editorial change to the exclusion of LEDs.
Do you have a second? I'll second.
Thank you. And with that, I'll go ahead and call a vote. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Gastinger,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. McClure,
Yes.
and Mr. Zemer.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, so now we will move on to 301 5th Street Southwest.
Have the 2 applicants online, Mike and Ashley McMahon, and I can bring them into the meeting, but if you think it'll be a short discussion, I can just we can just move ahead.
Why don't you bring them in anyways, but yeah, we can, you know, not worry them. This should be
Okay. Yeah. Mike and Ashley McMahon are joining shortly.
Yes, here's Robert. Jeff, thanks for help coordinating this meeting.
Sure.
I heard earlier, I think there's a question about the lace bark elms. I think that's what this is about.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you're asking because literally I'm a tree steward. Grafted thousands of trees and planted thousands of trees here. And the landscaping at the house was determined by the prior BAR and Mitchell Matthews. So I'm open to whatever you think is appropriate this time.
Excellent.
We probably need to stick to some sort of protocol. So Jeff, you want to introduce this briefly?
All right.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was trying to, tell Michael there's gonna be limited pain tonight. So
I've already been through this process, so it's okay. I know, I'm ready for it.
all right. So quickly, this is a COA request for 301 Fifth Street Southwest. It's an individually protected property. It's the Shelton Fuller House. It is a contributing structure in the Fifethville and Consular Neighborhoods Historic District, which is listed on the National Register. It was built by John Shelton, a black carpenter, possibly a free man, who in 1880 resided there with his wife, Rebecca, a seamstress, and their daughter, Julia. So, it's interesting, this is one of the older homes in the city. The request is for a COA to construct a rear addition and related site work. This project had been reviewed by the BAR back in 2010, and the project was delayed and COA expired. So that's why it's been brought back. The questions that were before that were brought up were addressing the trees on the Dice Street side. So there was the recommendation from one of the BAR members to revisit those. So that's keeping it short and sweet. But staff recommended the approval with the conditions that were referenced by Mr. Schwartz, and whatever changes you all have.
Do you guys have anything to add? Mike and Ashley?
No, not this time.
Okay. just want to make sure.
Okay.
All right, and just again for protocol, if does the public have any questions? Please raise your hand or press *9.
I do see a raised hand from Andy Gems. Andy, I'm going to press allow to talk, and then after I do that, I think you still have to unmute, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak. So I'll do that now.
Okay. Do I have audio?
Yes, we can hear you.
Just curious if there is an updated version of the proposal available for download. I've only have the one from 2010, 2011.
Yeah, nothing's changed. That's what's being.
We're making no changes whatsoever.
I just noticed an updated date on the one that Jeff was just showing.
So there's 2 drawings, so that we're clear. And Andy, good point. There's the drawings that were reviewed by the BAR, and I think that was in 2010. And then there's another set that has I think it's September 2011 date on it. Those were the construction drawings that we also had that were submitted the following year. So I used the one from the BAR review in 2010, and also that set that they match. It's just a more detailed set, and so that's what we have there. But no, nothing new. Nothing's been altered.
And both of those drawings, Andy, are available on the packet on the city website. So if you go to the Charlottesville City Calendar, and then you go to this meeting listing, you can see the drawings that I was just sharing available for download.
Okay, great. And will those drawings have the updated date that showed on the one that Jeff was going through?
I was just the screen that I was just showing was from the packet, the
Great.
PDF that's available online. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any others, Robert?
Any other public comments? Please use the raised hand feature. And I'm not seeing any other additional raised hands.
Questions from the board?
Just to clarify, it's my understanding y'all are not replacing the windows on the original house, correct?
We're not at this time. We're gonna try to rebuild them.
Great. Thank you.
Just so-
Mhm.
for the interest, the windows on the front are actually not all the same from 100 years ago. So some have 2 panels and some are 1. So I don't know if anyone picked up on that. But
It's same thing in my 1880 house there.
Okay,
It's
right.
it's a mishmash. That means that
Yes.
stuff came from all over the place. So
Yes, exactly.
All right, are there any comments from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
Oh,
Oh, Brett, did you have a question?
no, sorry, jumping the gun.
I'm glad to change the trees, Breck. You just let me know.
I'm not seeing any raised hands,
Okay.
Carl.
All right, now Breck.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I pulled it. Just for everyone's education, I did that lace bark elm is on the is on the city's tree list, but in limited only for limited use, and it's for its invasive qualities. So I'm glad that you're interested in changing the species. I think it would be a better contribution to the neighborhood. And I think if, so long as that you use the Charlottesville, the recommended tree species for the medium or large scale canopy, and also consider the way that they're located along the property line in the ways that they could contribute to the street. You know, currently they're shown in a kind of an arcing into the property, and you may determine that along the street might be better.
You know what? 2 things. It would seem you probably have expertise in this field. So if you have a recommendation, I'd love to hear it. And then on another note, there's discussion of the fence. There's not going to be a fence there because of the way the grade is with the city sidewalk and the storm sewer. But originally, my intention was to have built that up and planted a row of trees there, just like you're talking about.
Right.
That's something that I tried to address at the time, but it didn't go anywhere. Which has nothing to do with this meeting, but anyhow, I know what you're talking about. That'd be really nice. That's exactly what I wanted, but we all have constraints.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I think that will give you some latitude to select a tree. I don't know the site well enough to feel confident, and I also try not to give specific recommendations in the meeting. But I think that the tree list is a great place to start, and if you stay, and that will give you a little bit of flexibility as you develop.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's really much appreciated. I mean, to be honest with you, we don't get into this, but the last process, I think what put it on hold, I just went on another project, because what did it for me was when I was getting micromanaged about like what kind of plant. I mean, I'm a horticulturist, what kind of plants I could put, and that really kind of burned me. So thanks for giving me an option. That's unexpected, much appreciated. So
No problem.
All right, well, Breck, you want to amend Jeff's amended motion?
Sure. I will add do we need? I guess we'll need to make a full motion again.
I probably would be best, yeah.
Okay, I will just make a motion then. Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including ADC district guidelines, I move to find that the proposed addition and site work at 301 5th Street Southwest satisfies the BAR's criteria and is compatible with this IPP property, and that the BAR approves the application as submitted with the following conditions. 2 entrance doors at the west elevation will be wood with a design similar to that shown. The insulated glass in the windows will have an internal spacer bar aligned with the applied grills. Shutters are wood or composite material, not vinyl or metal. For any future exterior lighting, the lamping will be dimmable, have a color temperature not to exceed 3000 K, and a color rendering index not less than 80, preferably not less than 90. And that the proposed 6 lace bark elms be substituted with appropriate species from the Charlottesville tree list in the medium to large canopy category, and that the owner should have discretion to align those trees with the street.
Mike and Ashley, you guys okay with that?
thank you very much for your consideration.
Second.
Ron, second.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and call a vote. Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Lehendro, Mr. McClure,
Yes.
Miss Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
and Mr. Zemer.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
So moving on to
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike and Ashley. I'll go ahead and
Thanks, guys. See ya.
remove you from,
moving on to new items. We have 420 West Main Street.
All right. Nice. Also add Robert Edwards. If you're, I lost everybody. You don't have. I mean, if you can tell Robert Robert Watkins, you abstain if you wish. Just so you don't feel any pressure to respond. You don't have.
I'm going ahead and promoting Greg Jackson, who represents 420 West Main. So he'll be joining us.
Okay, here we go. So this is a COA request for 420 West Main. It is in the downtown ADC district. And just always have to clarify that the downtown ADC district does extend a bit further down West Main than people realize. This request is to construct a canopy in that front corner of what had been a service station. This building was constructed in 1960s. It was renovated into restaurant use in 2001. It is a contributing structure within the West Main Street Historic District on the National Register. And I think the most recent that we saw it was in May of 2018. There were some improvements done in that patio area that you see on the front. And again, this is a CO request for construction of a metal canopy at the front north elevation. And actually, Robert, I also have an interesting historic photo. Well, not historic, but an old photo of it that's interesting. As far as staff's recommendations, the building currently contributes, as said, to the West Main Street District, which has a history of automobile-related businesses. The BAR should discuss how the facade changes relate to the original historic building. The building has been modified over the years, and it's adapting it from a service station or a restaurant. While the proposed canopy is aesthetically consistent with the current expression of the building's architecture, it is still an addition to the historic facade. Staff does support the design. In fact, we support this proposal and the intent of the design. Our recommendation to the applicant and to you all was that some way that this could still remain physically separate, at least have a physical separation from the existing building, and then not to say that it's not anchored into it, but that it have possibly some connection points, but that the surface does not appear to be a continuous part of the historic building. There was a comment from the BAR about, in the comments I received, about how the seasonal plastic walls will be anchored, and additionally the recommendation that the polycarbonate roof, there should be specification that there's a UV protective coating due to yellowing that can occur on that type of material. There is no exterior lighting indicated. However, the BAR can also apply if it chooses the conditions that we've used for lighting. I'm sorry, it is the catenary lights, but I've intense terms of like bright exterior lights. So again, our recommendation is approval and with our comments about the design. Any questions for us? All right, Mr. Jackson, it's yours.
Greg, I'm happy to go back into the application and share any page that you'd like.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I guess one thing I'll just comment, there is a a noting of lighting, although I know it's not attached in a permanent manner, but there is a consideration for it that the owner wanted string lights that are dimmable and will certainly can adhere to the criteria that was suggested in 414. And then I'm ready for any questions. One thing I am noting when I'm looking at this is that unfortunately my rendering is not as perhaps as accurate as by color description. And probably page 12 gives a better indication of the difference in colors that would be as if this is a, painted the silver gray against the white building, which was the changes made from the last VAR meeting.
All right, well, thank you, Greg. Are there any questions from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
I'm looking at the attendee list, Carl, and I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. Questions?
Also have a sample of the poly roof if anybody's.
So
I like that. And I've held it up to the sun. And it does not allow the sun to come through as glare, which was one of my big concerns. Yet it does let light through. The bronze and clear of this are different in their characteristic and what they do, because I was somewhat fighting the owner a little bit on this, but when I got the sample and was able to test it myself, I was turned around a little bit about it. And I did email the rep today to triple check that it is a UV coating on it to protect it from the elements.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? I'm curious how, so you're intending on supporting this off of the structure that's in the existing canopy, correct? So you would be kind of puncturing the metal skin on the side of that canopy?
That's correct.
Have you thought at all how that detail is going to work? Are you just going to cut a hole and sleeve it in cleanly, or are you taking off that metal?
No, I haven't considered. I'm looking at the structural engineer's diagram, and that's basically what it is. So it doesn't address that completely. I think it is the intent to go through and connect to that W10 that's in there. So we have to penetrate. So, I can certainly get back to you, but I assume the look would be that we keep that flat appearance of the C channel, and it appears that the W8 just penetrates it. Now, how that's done, you're right, it could be tricky and being able to make that look clean.
But the desire is the appearance it'll just look like the beams are penetrating through the existing canopy versus taking it off and putting something else in its place.
I think so.
Okay.
All that's interior to the viewer sitting down and looking up, but it's certainly something I know you will notice if you're sitting there. So,
Mr. Jackson, I have a question. So is it the design intent that the new canopy match and align with the existing historic canopy?
yeah, that's like a trick question, I think. But it borrows from the language. It's inspired by it, and probably more so in this design. I didn't feel the need to deviate that much. It sets back from the original canopy, so the original canopy can, come out and still have its presence. So it does set back, but the columns stay in line and stay, slanted together. So it's trying to do both. It's trying to both work with what's there and honor it, yet be different. It's setback, have the different coloring, have the different kind of roofing, be fresh and new construction, and even the rhythm of the W8s, the cross the cross I-beams are a different rhythm.
I'm asking less for all those things than I am just the fascia of the new canopy.
The fascia would be very similar and just a flat surface, a C channel faced inward, but it would be painted the gray, the silver.
I just wanted to clarify that that's your intent. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. It might be for city, but maybe Greg knows the answer too. Is when putting up an infrastructure like this that allows for that installation of temporary wall panels, is that still governed by the tent codes, or are we voting whether to allow a kind of a plastic wall on Main Street whenever it's wanted?
Yes and no. And I wondered that. I mean, it is not a tent. It's a.
I think we're voting on plastic walls when the client or when the applicant wishes to have them up.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like the Potbelly sandwich shop was going to put plastic in its in the brick openings under the standard. And I think it's, we have a structure and they'd have plastic up. But
they did. Interesting. They did put something up.
No, I don't think they did at the sandwich shop. No, but that was the.
Sorry, didn't mean. Yeah, there was a beam issue that was involved there, but yeah, that's how I'm interpreting it is that this is a structure first. Second is this component that could be part of it or not, and then if so, how you all would want to treat it. But it's not a tent.
I mean, what happens if they glaze it in down the line? Then that becomes more of a building code question than a BAR question.
Well, I think it'd have to come back to us.
Come back.
No, I know that. I'm just wondering more about its definition as a space. That's all.
I mean, I don't have I mean, I'm not saying I have a legal definition of, but it's not a tent. It's a structure, and it's and with and that's how I've treated it in the staff report. We can certainly go back to if we want. If you had to defer and get a legal finding from zoning on how they would, if this was, but there's nothing in the seem to indicate that this would be a tent. So,
but I do have a question, sort of that Carl, you kind of kicked off. Greg, am I reading the structural diagram correctly? The W8s don't connect with the C4s; they don't align, correct?
Say it again, Tim.
The W8s and the C4s are not in alignment, correct? They're off grid with one another. Per this structural roof framing plan?
Yeah, they're not in alignment. And in fact, if you go to the architectural plan, page 15, that's more of the current alignment that we're spacing the W8s closer than they need to be so that they can be the structure for the roof without added purlins or anything like that. So that becomes the, so it's a cleaner system, although there are more of the W8s in there. So it wouldn't necessarily align with it. In theory, with Carl's question, you would not see from outside to inside, but from inside, you would see those members come into that space.
Right. So there is definitely some detail work to be figured out about those two overlap, as Carl pointed out. Okay.
Yeah.
And
one to make sure they don't conflict, but the other to make sure it's visually
Clean. Yeah.
working. Okay, yeah.
And similarly, you'd need to develop a detail of how it intersects the main portion of the building, because I mean, there's a lot of metal panels that
Excuse me.
probably not super easy to just cut a hole in. I don't think. I mean, maybe it is, but you'd also have to flash into there, and so I think we get the design intent, but I'm curious how that how that would end up being detailed. As well as you know, where does the water drain off of this? Because it looks like, is it flat or is it sloping to one side?
So it's a 1% slope
Mhm.
from the building out to the front. Let me see. I
Okay.
think there's an image somewhere. I think that shows that a little bit better.
Is it page 16? I couldn't tell if that was sloped or not. I guess that looks a little.
Yeah, 16. You can kind of make it out.
So you're gonna take the water off the front, is the idea.
Yeah. So the slope off the front, and then the intent is for it to also be sloped out to the west, to the corner, street corner, so to speak. And at that point, we would probably have to have some type of little notch or, tube to allow it to discharge, up near the front corner at the top, or a hole.
Okay. I had one more question. Sorry.
Sorry, Carl.
No, go ahead. I have to find my question.
It's just funny, the perspectival warp, or whatever you want to call it, implies that it's actually pitching back toward the building, opposite what Greg just talked about. And the one advantage I see to that is you can bring your leaders down against the building and not kind of float out in the outer corner. If your pitch was actually running the other way. Just curious.
Yeah, that's a possibility, and that is, basically a downspout. I think at this point we're trying to not have anything else attached to the building and just have it, shoot out in a sense. It's raining and it's just, it's kind of coming out from that point and further away from the building. But I see what you're saying. I don't, think
That's what it just sort of implies the opposite direction. That's all.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe kind of an illusion in the way the perspective is, the angle of view when it's snapshot.
That combined with the rake back columns makes it appear like it's, doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I see the elevations are flat, so I get it, but it was kind of interesting.
Did I space out, or did you describe how the side panels were going to work?
The side panels on the C channels?
No, the plastic. When it gets cold or rainy, have you thought about how you're going to apply those?
How we're going to keep it from moving around?
That, and when the sun comes out, do you take them off and someplace?
That's going to be the it's like any design, the user can toward any type of intention, but we'd do our best when we design it to where it's going to be able to be rolled up and out of sight. And then when down, as clean as possible.
But so that is the design intent, is that they roll up into the ceiling?
Yeah. Or, if that is not the case, then, the design intent is for them not to be seen, not like be a big rolled up plastic that is.
I guess I just can't imagine they've got a lot of storage space, because I don't think you can fold this up pretty tightly.
Yeah.
So I can't see them taking it back inside. Maybe they would, but I guess that's a big question mark for me, is how these
Okay.
panels are gonna work.
Is the intention that they're seasonal or like more like shades?
No, seasonal.
Okay.
Just for that time, the cold period.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that, these were put in place really actually, probably would have gotten to it. But when I sent it as a review to some of you guys a while back, that was a question. And then we looked at it and I talked to the owner and that's what we proposed. So it wasn't necessarily a part of the original intention to have those. Had it been, I might have tried to look at some kind of sliding panel type of system or something, but even something like that begins to give it more of a presence that starts to take away from the building rather than just an open air canopy. And with the clear plastic, it seems to allow it to still be an open air canopy that you can know that it's just a temporary type of cover, but it hasn't come from the client actually. So frankly, I can follow up on that. I assume that they would want to use such since I see them all over, but maybe by next winter, it's not such a concern anymore. They have the full indoor dining, and it's not necessary. It's kind of a thing now. And when we first started talking about this, to have it for all the outdoor dining, but I'm not sure if it will be that important, or even they might not even follow through with it.
I mean, it looks like you have space along the street elevation, inside of the structure there to have a pretty significant role, right? Judging by this, you got about 10 inches or 9 inches, right? Clear under the roof there, behind the C channel, behind the outside channel.
Yeah.
But,
or we can, we can adjust and make sure there is space there.
But your the short elevation, I don't know how you're going to do it there.
But I assume that, when they're using these is during the cold, the winter time, they're going to have them up. And when they're not, now that I'm thinking about it out loud with you guys, I suspect they're going to just take them down and place them somewhere in storage. And it's really not going to be a up and down thing daily. It's just going to be a seasonal during the winter.
Okay.
If they even use them. Again, we put them up as a scenario that if that was going to happen, that's what it would be. And frankly, now that we're talking about it, I admit I hadn't talked to the restaurant owner, about their intent. There was just an assumption that's since the question was posed, that's what we proposed.
Yeah. Well, it probably makes sense to design something in, whether they use it or not, because whoever, if Little Star ends up selling to somebody else a couple of years from now or whenever, not that I want that to happen, I love Little Star, but if it does, who knows what the next person might want to do. So, and it would be, yeah, so I think thinking about it is probably not a bad idea at this point. Are there other questions from the BAR?
I just wanted to offer that thinking about the potbelly pig, one of the issues we had there is that they kind of described it almost like a shower curtain that would just be pushed aside, and that was a concern that we didn't want that. It's either visible when it's used or it's not, and so there's also, and I've been talking with Andy McClure about it, project he has in mind and different ways of doing things. So, and I'm not trying to suggest a deferral, but there's maybe to separate out this.
We might be getting there, Jeff.
Yeah, just to be clear, so when I was thinking about, I had given some thought to there's a tent. We had, remember Craig came to us maybe 18 months ago with that pavilion across the street from City Hall. We had something that came in on East Water Street last month, at times referred to as a pergola. So, the idea of something with that permanent roof, permanent frame, permanent structure, I don't think of that as a tent. But I do think that how the sides are used really needs some thought. It's, yeah, we are in sort of a period right now where we're thinking about, you know, these enclosures because of circumstances with COVID. But just going back through old notes and comments about, and maybe even something Greg mentioned to me, looking at the old, the Sky Bar, Commonwealth Bar, you know, and the discussion about that. And it really came down to that permanence of those, that enclosure, that screening. You know, it's understandable when it's cold out, but then you say, well, you know, we're gonna have a week of rain, put them up, you know, and then suddenly something is just dangling there for, if it's a raining day, we'll pull it close. So I think your question, Carl, you know, initially is raising some questions in my head that I don't know how to answer them. I feel like in some ways it'd be wise to decouple the and also to get some to understand what, you know, where the city wants to go with these enclosures and you know, how they want to treat them. There's my 2 cents. Sorry to interrupt.
Nope, that's great. Well, let's move on to comments from the public, and then let's remember what Jeff has just said when we get to our own comments. If the public has any comments, please raise your hand or press *9.
Looking at the list, Carl, I don't see any raised hands.
Great. Okay. So comments from the board.
I don't think, I heard everything Jeff said, of course, but I just don't think deferring to the city for something that we can define ourselves is best, personally. I mean, I guess I'm a little biased, but I did talk to the owner of the restaurant about this prior to it being presented to us. And, you know, we did just approve the C&O thing. And prior to that, there were a couple other things that, you know, it's the potbelly pig, as Jeff calls it, which I think is hilarious. And then what's the other one? Sky Bar. I mean, we have some precedent, is what I'm saying. So I don't know that we can't answer this question one way or another.
I agree with
Isn't it the potbelly pig?
Sandwich.
Okay.
No pig.
It's a stove.
Bellies.
That's what messed me up when I tried to Google it. I got a potbelly pig.
Well, I have, oh, go ahead, Sherry.
Go ahead, Greg.
This is a really cool building, and one really character defining one for certain era of Charlottesville, and one that an era that is going to lose, you know, is losing more of its members, I guess, over the next few years. And one of the really character defining features is that canopy that shoots out towards the street and its angled supports. And so while I very much do think a project could succeed here, I'm concerned that this really complicates the legibility of that canopy, and through the painting also kind of muddles the story. So I'm concerned about the fascia being the same depth and meeting in plane with the existing canopy. And one thing that's also been lost in the current painting scheme of the entire structure all going to white is the clarity and kind of celebration of that structural component. Previously, it was a kind of a maroon color, and it really stood out from the rest of the structure. And now in this proposed painting scheme, not only are the kind of angled supports all the same color, including the old ones, you know, there could be a different way potentially of using color and maybe differentiation of that roof plane that still allows for the clear legibility of that original structure. So I think with some tweaks, I think it could get there, but I'm concerned about it at the moment, and I don't know how to deal with the enclosure. That's a really difficult one. It seems like that open space is really important to its historical character, and I'm worried that it's kind of like inching into being enclosed, which would really kind of destroy the legibility of it as an automotive artifact.
Anyone else?
Sherry, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm supportive of the application for the canopy because I do think that it meets the guidelines. This building has, you know, our records say the first iteration and closing that entryway box into the bar was 2000, but I think there were revisions made to it prior to that. Maybe ones that maybe ones that weren't approved by the BAR, but nevertheless, the building has evolved, and I think the canopy is respectful of the original building, and certainly the new box that was created and enclosed, you know, 21 years ago. I would like to see more detail on the drop sides, the impermanent sides, materials. I think I would agree with other members of the BAR that I'm not ready to approve the enclosure aspect of it without a little bit more information. I also look and I think you've got at least 5 or 6 kind of industrial lights that you'll be removing to place this canopy. And which begs the question, there should be a lighting plan that should be submitted. It seems like there will need to be some lighting here, I would imagine, even though the canopy allows a bit of light. So that's where I am on this currently.
I think a canopy can work. And I would just like to see some distinction between the canopy as you've designed it, Mr. Jackson, and what was there before. It is a contributing building. It's a contributing building to the ADC. What I can't tell is it a contributing building to the West Main Street Historic District. I think it is, looking at the DHR report. And the Secretary of Standards would tell you with an addition like this to not create a false historicism and imply that the canopy that you're adding, there's no distinction between it and the canopy that's there. So I would suggest, I mean, even if you dropped it 6 inches below, the top of it 6 inches below the canopy that's there, I mean, that would be enough distinction in my mind, and then maybe do something a little different to the fascia, but it could, I think a canopy is possible, and I think there's a good reason for it. I just would like to see some distinction between this new canopy and what's there.
From my perspective, I kind of go back to Carl's first question there, just with the junction between the old and the new there. I'm getting a reverb. Is everybody else getting reverb? And that really might be kind of also paralleling what Jody said. I mean, maybe what there needs to be is some sort of a reveal or resolution of the new canopy where it parallels the old one. You know, like there's a reveal or something there, and they're separated, don't quite touch, and maybe they are a little bit out of plane. But I just think there's some games you can play with the language of it that would create that sense of this is new. I mean, the basic form of it and everything, I think is nice and complimentary. I don't have any problem with it. I just think it needs a little more development at kind of the level of language, you know, that says I am different. And some of that could certainly be done with color, but I also think it's a little problematic for those W8s and everything to kind of pierce through into the roof. I think that's where you got to get a little inventive. And I understand, you know, maybe that one long W10 or whatever it is that's running through everything cantilevers off and it stays put, but it just seems like there's some massaging to do to that to make it pull it off. But I think You know, if they decide to put curtains on it down the line, I just think that would have to come back and, you know, because you'd have to figure out how they're laid out and all that kind of stuff. We just need to look at it. I don't really see this as a problem per se. I mean, I'm everywhere at this point. Does that make sense, Greg?
Yeah, and again, we, you know, I think I sent the first initial sketches to you, and then we moved it around to a few other folks when I was just testing it out. And we only put that curtain in there upon a question, like, how would you do it if you're going to do it? So frankly, you know, I think it could be very much like the pavilion and the Mickey Courtyard that's not intending to have them. You know, if someone did ask that question, I might have put them around that too. But, you know, we didn't bring it forth, you know, necessarily. And I would be happy decoupling it. And if it does, the forces do come about to say they want something, then we could bring it and show it. But that was only, I think, to address a question, a scenario, of how it could be done.
Right.
Which
I
I was
just think,
curious about myself, you know.
yeah. The problem I think with it right now is it's you know, the lightness and the sort of the smoothness and cleanness of it is pretty much, you know, not true.
Yeah.
you know, it's not going to turn out like that. So it harms your argument. I just think it needs to go away unless, you know, you guys actually want to come back and apply for that specifically. I think instead we concentrate on the roof.
Yeah, that's just one page. I can
Yeah,
take
I know.
out.
I know. I'm not hung up on it. I'm just saying it. I think Jody and Carl sort of zeroing in on more distinction between the two pieces makes sense to me.
Yeah, we know the guidelines, but you know, I don't know. You know, I think you know, like codes sometimes don't meet the specifics of a project, and they're generic, and you know, and in this case, we felt like at the end of the day, the building is better with the canopy than without, given where the building is now. You know, it's not the original Sinclair 1960s gas station anymore. But I think the canopy brings that spirit back, actually, rather than take away from it.
No, I have no problem with the canopy. I'm just suggesting that tweaking the detail a little bit where the two intersect seems like the issue, or would address that particular question.
And you know, similarly, I'm supportive of this concept, and I think I apologize. I may have been the person who asked that question about the plastic on the walls.
I didn't want to name names.
I do think you know, it would be important for you to make sure the client doesn't want those, because I think it's better to design them in than, you know, at some point someone's going to tack up some plastic, and that would, you know, it'll happen without coming to the BAR, and then that'll be that, you know, a whole issue in itself. But that's up to you. That's between you and the client. I think you know, what Jody and some of the others have been saying about the, you know, trying to have a little more distinction between the existing canopy and the new. I think those are definitely very valid and good points. I'm kind of struggling with it as to, you know, as to whether I would have approved as is or not, but I think it would be much better with more distinction. I would actually, the thing that holds me up the most and would make me want to defer this is I think it's not quite developed yet. Obviously you figured out the structure, but I want to know, you know, how this actually joins the metal panels. It looks really nice, neat, and clean, but I want to know how you're going to figure that out, how you're going to flash into the building, you know, how you're going to make the at some point you know, you're going to have to figure out how the water stays, or it doesn't penetrate between, you know, the existing canopy and the new canopy. So there's some details there that I think need to be worked out, because I think they could actually be very noticeable visually. Also, you know, if you're going to drop a downspout, I think we need to see it, need to know where it goes, because again, that's, you know, it's going to change the visual aspect of this project. So conceptually, I think it's a great project, but I just think you need to take it up another level so we actually really know what it's going to look like.
And Greg, to your point about, well, it's not the Sinclair station. No, it's not, but the bones of the Sinclair station are still here. And one of the nice things about the design that was done to convert it to a restaurant is the fact that it kept those bones, and those bones are still obvious. And they're so obvious that the building was just recently determined to be a contributing member to the historic district, not because of the restaurant changes, but because they didn't destroy the original Sinclair gas station bones. I keep saying, but that station is still there. So still continuing on with that line of thought, like the restaurant before, the new changes that we make now should have the same kinds of distinction.
Just so to make sure, is there anybody here who would be ready to approve this tonight as is, or with conditions? Andy, Ron, Sherry? Okay. So that's obviously not going to make it.
Can I just say, Carl, just one point I want to point out is that nobody's really said anything wrong as far as I'm concerned, but it already does have plastic sides today, right now. And it has for every winter that I know of, ever back when it was, I forget what it was called, but and there's a bunch of restaurants that have that as well. So it's kind of like, I don't think they want plastic sides when they don't have to have plastic sides. I don't think anybody wants plastic sides when they don't have to have plastic sides. So we're already approving stuff like that every day, every year, you know, or every winter, every year, I should say. But
well,
sorry.
I think, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I think what's in front of Little Star right now is an exception due to the pandemic. I know Maya and the Mariscos, I believe, have just always had their tents and somehow have managed to do that. I don't quite understand how. I think Little Star got theirs in because of the pandemic.
But there's at least 4, you know, there's at least 4 in that stretch. I mean, I hear you, but.
And believe me, I'm all for, I have no problem if they want to put plastic walls up on this to enclose it in the winter. I just want to know what that looks like. And if Greg wants to take it out of the project, that's fine with me personally. But yeah, your point is well taken. Yes. We just need to know what it looks like.
Page 1 shows it like that, for what it's worth, with the tent in place.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's a vast improvement over the umbrellas or the tent. I mean, you know, big time. So it keeps the character of the architecture and all that. I just, you know, I don't know. I mean, you know, I guess really it's sort of like seeing window types in a more typical project. We just need more detail. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the design at all. I don't have a problem with the canopy. It's just that it is front and center, so it would be good to have a better sense. It just seems kind of unresolved where it meets the old canopy to me, which I know that was your point as well, Carl.
James, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I just kind of echoing a lot of the sentiments you've already heard. You know, the canopies have been a traditional gas station feature even back to like the 1920s and such. You know, you think of like the Fry Spring Station with the terracotta roof and whatnot. So I think that as a design feature is something that should be celebrated. And in terms of the kind of the plastic walls, I wonder if one way to make them a little more successful wouldn't be to pull them back from the front edge of the new proposed canopy. Right now, the rendering shows them just kind of dropping straight down off the front. It's just a big box. And I think that if you pull them back, you know, a foot or so, it would, you know, give that reveal and give that definition to that canopy. And I agree with Jody in terms of seeing if there's a way to kind of separate it from the building, or drop it down just slightly so that the original canopy can still shine.
So it sounds like there's not enough for approval tonight, but it sounds like you have support for the project. So you've got a couple people asking you to differentiate the canopy a little bit, either drop it or find some other means of differentiation. If the client decides they want the side panels, I think you've heard some comments on how that might work. If they don't, great. Personally, if you want my vote, I need to see a little more detailed development and how this meets the existing building, just to make sure that there's no surprises when it's finished. And if you don't want to show me the innards and the guts of, what happens when you cut a section through there, that's fine. I guess I'm really just concerned about the end.
So, can I ask a question? So what, if just, and this is really more procedural question, what would a conditional approval consist of, or is that really not possible in the way we're kind of operating things now?
We could do a conditional one, but it might get complicated.
Right.
Greg, are you in a huge time crunch?
Well, yeah, you can imagine. They wanted this a lot sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
It's a restaurant during COVID.
Yeah. So that and
a month in good weather does make a difference. We have an economy to open back up, and I'm not saying that's a sole reason to support that, but I think this is a factor.
Yeah, we were already trying to talk about ways to fast track it if it was approved. And the canopy is certainly something that I don't think is necessarily has to be there. And we can certainly come back with that. I don't think it could be lowered. I can look at that, but just in looking how the structure connects, I think it needs to be at the same level. It is already set back. The color is different a little bit, maybe not enough. I had talked to the owner about where it connects with the side existing canopy and against the building to maybe hold back visually with the C channel set back a few inches or so with a darker, as a very small way to kind of separate it, similar to that addition we saw earlier, Dice in a way. They did a whole bigger part, but as a visual separation between the two elements. The owner wasn't interested in that. He's kind of liking it and wants it that way. So it would be back to the drawing board for him. And I agree about the details. It's always sort of a challenge to how much work ahead we do to present to see how it's going to fly versus because you go in, you can spend a lot of time on details and run up the bill. So it's always a tricky thing about that. So I'm not sure really what I'm contributing to this decision point. But it's good to hear that the general concept is, so I can see the dilemma as to whether this could be approved with conditions or defer.
Greg, I wonder if one strategy might be to taper that piece that cantilevers towards the street so that you have a smaller member so that the canopies end up having a different thickness, which could be further differentiated by the color somewhat. And it seems like that end piece could probably want to be a little bit lighter anyway, and maybe could be thinner and differentiate.
Yeah, the outer band could definitely be a smaller, a narrower profile, if that's what you're talking about.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea. I hate to say this. I feel fairly strongly that I think we need to at least defer this a month to let you kind of verify all these things and make sure that you can, that it all works out that way. And also it just, because, you know, when I asked you the question about what happens when stuff, you know, the beams meet the existing construction, and you said, oh, I haven't really thought about that much yet. I at least want to see something that says that you thought about it. I'm sorry I don't mean to be snarky about that, but I think that's, that eliminates surprises. So, you know, it doesn't have to be a CD level section, but I think we just need to see that you have thought about it. And again, with the water, I'm a little confused. I think at one point you mentioned, did I hear you say that you just let it spill off the edge? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, the front corner would have like a scupper or a little, you know, little exit port
to go
into the planter bed.
The tree that's planted there on the corner, or into, I mean, that could make a nice hole in the ground. Again, it's just another thing that it would be important to think about, and to, you know, if you're going to do that, then on the plan, we just need to see a pile of rocks or something, you know, that just to show that it's not just, you know, splashing off the sidewalk or, you know, digging a hole in the ground. Does that make sense?
It does, you know.
I'm sorry.
I think, yeah, we would have the connection as clean as we could do it, and it certainly would take care of any water. You know, I don't think, but I can understand that you want to see that rather than assume that best practices would.
And Sherry made a really good point. I mean, you could light the whole thing with string lights, but I think you might find that that's just not sufficient. And, you know, it would be good to get those approved sooner than after the fact and have them just show up. And then again, we have, you know, Tim Moore comes and hunts you down.
It would be nice if the lighting, and Tim would echo this, were nicely designed as part of it. I just wouldn't want, it's such a simple canopy. I wouldn't want the lights to really be an afterthought. You know, it could be a really nice thing. And they could be very tucked away, frankly.
So we could impose a deferral on you, or you could request one, which gives you more freedom of time to come back. Or if you have more questions for us.
No, I guess I'll request the deferral so we can have the. My understanding, if you guys defer, it has to be back next month. You know, though I'm sure that these guys are going to want to go as fast as possible, but just to give us more flexibility, that if we requested it, that's the only difference between the two. Is that?
Yes. And I guess just to make sure, did anybody want to attempt a very, you know, a motion that gets all the conditions embedded in there? I don't want to prevent that.
No, I would like to see something. I don't know. I mean, I'm perfectly willing to, you know, if there was a procedure for getting something in a week and we could vote and look at it and then vote online, that would be fine with me too. But I would want to see something. But I think that it has been tried before, or we can't do it, or something like that.
Yeah, that'll
which is too bad. I understand that the need to hurry this along, but I would want to see something.
All right, do we have a motion to accept the deferral?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Breck seconded.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and call a vote. Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro?
Aye.
Mr. McClure?
Aye.
Miss Lewis, sorry.
Mr. Lewis says yes.
I'm sorry, Sherry. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Gastinger?
Aye.
And Mr. Zemer?
Aye.
Thank you. The vote is unanimous.
Thank you, Greg. Sorry.
I'm illustrating your point, Sherry. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry, I made light of it. It was.
No. I agree. It's, if you get in the rhythm. So anyway. So I will go ahead and, because the next application is 128 Chancellor Street, I'm going to promote Tom and Bill Sherman, who are representing this project.
So, am I still on? Yes, I am. Here it is. All right, so quickly I'll dive in. This is a COA request for 128 Chancellor Street. This is structures within the corner ADC district that is contributing. This was constructed in 1926. It's a rectangular form, 3-bay framed shingle dwelling or swelling. Check our spelling on that. With craftsman and colonial revival stylistic elements. It was constructed as a dwelling. The house was occupied until the 1960s when it transitioned to other uses. And since the 1980s, it has served as the Center for Christian Study at the University of Virginia. This is somewhat of a continuation of a project you all reviewed last year for the rear addition. And there was some alterations to the front elevations, and those were pulled out with the decision to treat those separately, and that's what's here before you now. So this is a request for alteration to the front entrance and to the terrace, and it, I guess, characterize it as a hardscaping project on that entrance terrace. We kind of wondering why I didn't recommend this as a consent agenda item, but staff does recommend approval. Any questions for Robert or I?
Bill or Tom, do you guys have anything to add?
Sure, this is Tom, and just thank you for seeing us tonight. And Bill and I have chatted a little bit before the meeting, and I think Bill's going to just give a little bit of explanation and background to it, and then we'll let you guys have it.
Okay. Then, Robert, if you could pull up the first the page. I'm getting an echo here, which makes it a little tough. But first, the page with the existing conditions. There that wanted to take a look. This project, as Jeff mentioned, is a hardscape project that is looking at the front entry, which is currently a asphalt parking areas across the portion of the front, and some plantings, a couple of bushes, and some ground cover in front of the house. The desire of the Christian Studies Center is to make this usable in a way that would be more amenable to a range of uses. And so if, Robert, if you could go forward to I think it's the last page, is the smaller plan. Actually, let's back up to the renderings just for a moment, and then I'll walk you through. So this is a view from the south corner, looking at the removal of the asphalt, replacing that with brick on sand in a herringbone pattern. There is a series of benches along the edge of the sidewalk that are both intended as both a kind of a gift and an invitation to the city, as creating an edge that actually does demarcate the boundary between the center and the sidewalk, but they are open to seating actually on both sides. There's also a small planter bed visible there. Let's jump to the plan, and I'll just walk us quickly from right to left or from south to north as we move up Chancellor Street. There is currently on the property something of an enclosure for garbage and trash cans, and a parking space on that south end. The parking space would now be bricked, but that means it also could serve at times as not a parking space. The garbage can area would be enclosed in fencing that matches existing fencing on the property and painting that matches the paint color of the house. There's a kind of a boardwalk that runs back along the edge of the house there. That's actually the fire egress from the fire stair of the new addition behind. In front of the existing house, there are no changes to the building structure itself, just the landscape in front. There'd be an area for a terrace where they may have some wooden furniture and some seating around an existing Japanese maple. The benches that you saw that create an edge to the street and maintaining the current entrance to the front porch and the front door. To the left, we've showed this with the parking that is possible here, but the goal and the intention is that it would not be used as parking all the time now. It would be possible for them to put up a tent in conformance with all the tent regulations in that space, or to simply have it as an open terrace for it could serve as a social space for the center. There is on the northern property boundary, there is a fence along that edge, which also masks a dropping off of the property, of the grade along that side, and also screens a bit of the neighboring wooden fire stair that comes off that building. And that again would be the board fencing to match the current board fencing on the property itself. There is a large historic tree, which we have been working with tree consultants to protect, which will actually may alter the lines slightly where you see the arc around that tree. That arc is going to get a bit larger, which may mean the parking may be a bit more limited than we're showing here. There may be one space left if they were going to be using that for parking. But the primary use here is, and the goal is to actually put that tree in a better and healthier condition rather than running under the asphalt in the way that it is right now. But I want to make it clear that the cars are shown there simply for illustrative purposes. These are not formal parking spaces. This is primarily a hardscape landscape for social uses. I don't know if Tom wants to add anything. But and be happy to answer any questions.
No, Bill, I don't think so at this time.
All right, well, thank you. Are there any questions from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
Looking at the list, Carl, I don't see any raised hands.
Great.
I did see a raised hand.
Yes, Gary Albright. So I'm going to press allow to talk, and then you'll have to unmute yourself, and then you can speak.
Hi, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, we're the backdoor neighbors to the center. We've been back there since they bought the building in 1976. And, we have concerns with the whole development of the property that have never been properly addressed. I know the towering nature of the rear aspect of it that we express concern about, and then the drainage issue and the loss of green space all conspire to make this quarter-inch plot into a quarter-acre lot into a 10,000 square foot building. Just seems way out of proportion. When they put an addition on the back in '96, we were fine with that. It still left a lot of green space in the back, but I express concerns about their drainage, which drains onto our parking lot, and the facade, which towers over our buildings, and none of that was ever addressed. That's it. I'm
Thank you very much.
Bill or Tom, you can respond to that, or you don't have to if you don't want to.
We do have another I don't know if applicants usually respond after each comment, but we do have another raised hand. So
Do the other raised hand and we'll.
okay. So thank you, Mr. Albright, and I'm going to promote or not promote, allow Robert Allebach to speak. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
So we are represent 134 Chancellor Street, which is the neighbor 36 Chancellor Street, which is just up the street. And the only thing in the front that I would suggest is that if you walk there very often, the sidewalk is very, very small. And by putting that seating so close to the street, if people were to actually sit, I'll say facing the street, it'd be pretty hard for people to pass. So it would probably be in the interest if it was actually pushed back a little bit off the street to give room for people to pass. I'm thinking people wheelchairs and things like that. So that would be probably the only concern we have.
Thank you very much. Any other raised hands for public comment? I think that's it.
Robert. Yeah, you guys are welcome to respond to either of those. You're not obligated to. I know some of this, the first question, it's kind of, it's a done deal as far as the BAR is concerned, but you're welcome to respond.
Oh, well, since Dr. Albright's, this is Tom. If I'll go ahead if I can, briefly. We are aware of Dr. Albright's concerns which came up during the site plan review, and we were actually in the midst of addressing those with the city presently, particularly around the stormwater. And we were waiting for city comments on our stormwater plan. And then the intention is once we get that squared away from the city angle to meet with Dr. Albright to review what's been approved and what our strategy is. But we're trying to do so in a manner that respects his issues that he raised last fall, but it just hasn't come back to the city yet. And then regarding the massing, in fact, we've actually moved the building back from the property line about 10 feet from when he last saw that in the fall. It has to deal with some addition of some of the bump outs in the back, which we're getting into some code issues in terms of fire rated glass, and just moved everything back a little bit, partly to address the same comments that were raised by him and some of the other Ellwood neighbors at that time.
Does that mean that we'll be seeing this, the building again come before us?
I don't know. It looks the same, so you have to tell me what you want to do about that.
I think if it's moved back 10 feet, it probably is you know, I don't think we'd have a problem, but I think we do need to see that.
Yeah, I think just to clarify that point just for a moment, the actual footprint on the ground where it meets the ground stays where it was. We had some projecting bays on the back, and we've actually just pulled them back. They don't project quite as far. So it's really just a, you know, as you recall the elements on the back, there were three larger elements that or three elements in relation to the core structure, and we've reduced their presence in the back slightly by pulling them back. It was partly for code issues, it was partly for cost and massing issues, and it was partly to address the concern about how imposing this was going to be. So there were a number of factors leading into that. I think they were all completely within the spirit, and I think somebody looking at the two sets of drawings would have a hard time seeing that we did something differently, but that you would feel it as actually an improvement looking at it from below. But we'd be happy to show them to you and let us know if they need any further review beyond that. With respect to the front issue, which we have before us today, that's actually the point about the sidewalk and the proximity of the sidewalk. We'd like to maintain that edge along the sidewalk edge, but we could entertain modification of the actual bench design, for instance, that might prevent people from sitting on that side facing the street if that were felt to be a concern. I understand completely the width of sidewalk issue, but we are happy to work with neighbors to make things work as well as possible for everyone. We had been thinking of it actually from the other perspective, that people walking up the street actually may feel comfortable actually just having a seat there along the way and having a conversation. In a way, it's a part of the outreach mission of the institution to invite participation and engagement with the community.
All right. Thank you, guys. Are there any questions from the board?
Do you know what the width of the sidewalk is right there?
I believe, I have to double check. I believe it's a 4-foot sidewalk.
Amazingly, it doesn't look like there are any tall power poles except just off the side of your property. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are not power poles. And Tim, in anticipation of a question that you may be asking, is we are not adding any new lighting in the front. There is enough actual light coming from street lighting that already exists on the property. I mean, or on the street adjacent to it. We don't feel the need to add any additional lighting on the property.
Thanks, Bill.
So, and I don't know, maybe this is an optical illusion, but from street view and from some of the photos you submitted, it really looks like the site slopes down from the street towards the house. Is that, or towards the building? Is that accurate? And if so, I'm trying to understand how that's accommodated in the site plan.
The primary slope is actually running from parallel to the street rather than back. There is, at the point, the adjustment that we're making slightly is where the brick meets the house. We have an area that will be actually a slightly recessed gravel area immediately adjacent to the house, so that we're not running the brick right up into the shingles. And because there's some utility inlets there that are existing, the gas service comes in there. And so we're going to be holding the brick back a bit from the house and using that to pitch the water in a way that that follows the current topography, but it's all being handled as part of the actual drainage itself, and then where that water goes is being handled as part of the more comprehensive review that we're doing on all of the site drainage with the city right now.
Okay.
So the intention is beneath the brick and the sand bed, there's a drainage system. So it's a porous, we're treating this as a
It's a porous surface, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's being taken, collected there, and then run around to the stormwater system underneath the building. Condition.
So there's not going to be any need for a step or something, or from the sidewalk to the brick. Is it flush from the sidewalk?
All flush. It's all flush. And you'll notice that these can see it somewhat in the existing photographs. That sidewalk's in pretty bad shape, mostly because of what the roots have been doing to the of the tree in the corner, and so that will all be cleaned up as part of this process. And I'm, again, working to make sure that we don't do any damage to the roots and in fact leave the tree in a better situation than it's in currently.
I think we did get, and unfortunately, Joe Rice kept getting the questions from the public for us. So sorry, Joe. But I think one question that came up, and I know it's not our purview, but I think the public was curious. Someone asked about the time frame for construction. I think it was a sorority down the street was just curious about how it was going to affect the school year or whatever. Obviously, I imagine this is going to be a long-term, going to take a while to build, but.
Right, so this is Tom. So the time frame, so we're working with Alexander Nicholson. They're our construction manager with Design Phase Services. So they're estimating a 16-month construction period. And at this point in time, we're targeting a December 1st start, December 1st, 2021 start. So that's a March 23 completion date. And we've actually met with the sorority down the street just the other day, and and did speak to them a little bit about this time frame and impact of the project. We have reached out to them and St. Paul's Memorial Church, and then Dr. Albright will be next as soon as we get our city comments on the stormwater.
It actually looks like Joe has just sent us a message to follow up on that. All right, so you guys talk about the time frame, and then will they agree to repair any damage to the entry of the parking lot or entrance to the parking lot caused by construction equipment? I assume that's Tracy Daniels who's asking that question, so I assume that's the parking lot below your building, but
yeah, can I, sorry to interject.
Sorry.
These are, so I know this project's caused some angst and some folks, and I've gotten a lot of questions about it, but you know, just there is the continued process that Tom and Bill refer to it, and those do, to make sure you all know that anything that comes out of the site plan review, the changes, I'm in that loop. So if something changes, you'll know about it. It won't be something that we miss. And as I understand, some folks they asked about the driveway and construction traffic and things like that, and who's going to fix what. And I mean, Joey Winter had been the planner on this project. Joey now lives in Reno. So I think Missy Creasy's handling this one, but I'm trying to get some information from her that I can share with people. But just to be clear, you know, the BAR, its role is not to
I know this isn't our purview.
I just want to make, well, I'm sharing that out there with the folks, you know, that I even looking at the map, I'm curious how they're going to get, you know, the construction in and out of there. I've built on difficult sites, so it's always interesting to see how people would solve it. But that, you know, the BAO, you know, that our role isn't at that point. But if, like I say, I do see a change on this property or something that changes because of the construction activity, permanent alteration, we'll review it. But as soon as I hear back from Missy on where this is in the plan, when I say the planner that's taking this thing through the site review and the construction review, I'll have information to share with people. Okay. That's all.
I've got a question, perhaps for Bill. You talked a little bit about how the protection of the ginkgo's roots was going to happen. How are you intending to protect the Japanese maple, and with the installation of you're going to have to remove almost 6 to 8 inches of the top surface to install those pavers?
The current design holds that diameter around the Japanese maple. I think it's at about 54 inches of a diameter of opening. And so it's actually a very good question. We are working with Bartlett Tree Services, who've been caring for these trees for a longer period now, and they felt like our plans were going to be fine with respect, particularly with respect to the Japanese maple, and recommending that we actually expand the diameter with respect to the ginkgo. So it's that's what we're basing that on, that review that we did, the walkthrough that we did with them on the plans.
Okay.
Well, if you guys have any more questions, we can come back to them, but are there any comments from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
I don't see any raised hands, Carl.
Okay. Board?
I just want to say I support the application, and I like the benches the way they are. I don't think y'all should put it back on them facing the street or anything, because I agree that, you know, the intent is to try and be welcoming. Yeah.
I agree with that.
I'll say a few things. Last time this was presented, I had a number of concerns just about the precedent that this could set for the street and the amount of paving that's installed in the front yard, which is, if anything, I think the planted area got smaller and less consequential. Really, this is going to be basically potted plants at the street front. And I think that even though this is a tiny, tiny site, it is a bit jarring that the entire lot would be paved. I would prefer that if the benches could even move inboard and that band be a low hedge or continue to break up the kind of the continuation of the brick and paved surface of the sidewalk. I think that would be more in keeping with the character of the neighborhood and adjoining properties. And the other is, I think that my other concern is probably not is still within our guidelines, but the color of the brick pavers and the brown shingle together with this extent, it's very brown. It gets pretty intense, and I think that shows up even in the renderings. I think that while that brick color might be found appropriate by the board, I might recommend you look at a little bit more contrast. It might just feel very samey. But those are my concerns.
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to, agree with Breck on the amount of hardscape, but I think it's also I'm struggling to understand the scale of the site, because I mean, when you're there or when you look at photographs of it, it feels so much smaller than it looks on your plan. And I'm just struggling to understand what I'm missing. And maybe it's just you're gonna limb up the Japanese maple and suddenly it'll make more sense. But yeah, I don't know. I am struggling with this. Unless anybody else has any more comments, maybe we just need to see is everybody else other than Breck ready to approve, or do they share Breck's concerns?
I would just say I agree with Breck philosophically. I'd love to see more green in front of it, but also knowing Canterbury House, which is just next door, and the fact that they have a lawn area or an earthen area, and they can't keep plants there because the people are stepping all over it, and it just ends up being denuded from the activity that goes on. So as much as I agree with Breck, I'd love to see green too. The reality is I don't think you could keep it.
Well, if nobody else has any more concerns, does somebody want to make a motion?
I will, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry.
Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed alterations at 128 Chancellor Street satisfy the BAR's criteria and are compatible with this property and other properties in the corner ADC district, and the BAR approves the application as submitted. And I'll alter my motion if anybody has any friendly amendments. Actually, I'll make one. I'll ask that some consideration be made with regard to Mr. Gaskinger's comments about the brick. I note that there's a brick chimney on the side, and perhaps the brick of the hardscape could match that brick that's currently existing on the, we don't have, I don't think we have a, I know we do have a color photo, a small one.
Yeah, I think that's their current intention, is to match that chimney.
Yeah, I don't, and I don't know how kind of monochrome the chimney itself is, but it looks like it's a little bit varied. Anyway, I withdraw my own amendment to my motion and let others entertain others. Thank you.
I could see an amendment being a recommendation, not a requirement, to look at the brick color for more contrast. Do you accept that, Sherry?
Yes.
Okay. I'll second your motion.
Thank you, Carl. I'll go ahead and call a vote. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. McClure. Thank you. Miss Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Gastinger,
No.
and Mr. Zemer.
Aye.
Thank you. The vote is 8-1 with Mr. Gastinger opposed.
Oh, Andy is saying 2 or.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Andy. Okay, the vote is 7-2 with Mr. McClure and Mr. Gastinger opposed.
All right. Thank you, guys.
I do have one question. So are we going to ask Bill and Tom just to circulate, or give to Jeff the changes, just to circulate them through the board, just for us to confirm that it's not significant from our point of view?
I guess we should let Jeff will look at the permit drawings, and we can, yeah, he always, I don't want to speak for Jeff. Jeff, you speak. Sorry.
What's that mean, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm really working on my brevity, and the answer is Carl is correct.
All right.
Okay. Does anybody want a break?
Sure.
Yes, nodding head. So it is 7:17 right now on my computer. So let's come back in 5 minutes. So 7:22-ish.
Yep. Thank you, Bill and Tom, and I'll go ahead and promote Kareem Habab, who is the next applicant.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Robert. Is there any chance we can get Bruce Wardell also on?
Carl, you brought your friend.
Yeah, they both woke up and decided they want to be part of the meeting.
Oh, this is where the fun begins, Carl.
I hope not. Oh, they're being a little more chill tonight, so hopefully they, yeah, we'll see.
I'm keeping my camera off for a bit to so you won't have to watch me eat my pasta, my belated dinner. So I apologize for that.
Dinner here was leftover barbecue. That was really challenging.
I had
That's
pieces of asparagus.
I also had leftover barbecue from the new place Vision. It's pretty good.
Where's
Oh,
that?
yeah, good.
Alan?
It's you know where the Staples store is? It's down where the Subway is. It's right in beside Shabine. It's actually pretty good.
Ah, wow. Okay. I'm picky, but I will try it out.
What's your barbecue, Breck? Is it homemade?
Yeah. I'm from Kansas City, so it's a serious
Oh
thing.
my gosh, barbecue society stuff.
So
Greg, we're gonna
vinegar, mustard, what?
Sorry?
What are you, vinegar, mustard? Is there?
Oh, no. No,
Oh,
no. No. Actually, my grandpa used to say, he would serve his barbecue without sauce. He'd say, you could, if you want to ruin it, you can do that yourself.
Breck,
right.
we'll have to get together and talk sometime. My family hosts an annual barbecue contest at our house in Dinwiddie County.
Did I
Oh, wow.
hear James is inviting us to an annual barbecue party?
Yes, I did hear that, yes.
I could probably put y'all on the list. Unfortunately, it got canceled due to COVID last year, but we've had it for 10 years and probably 200 people show up, and we
Wow.
make t-shirts and have a keg
Nice.
truck and trophy with a gold pig on it. So good time.
Wow.
Jody's been.
Oh, I can attest. It's a wonderful affair. It's a Bacchus would love it. I did.
Yeah.
Breck and we're banking on post-COVID that we'll finally have an exciting Halloween on Wine Street. Again, we've been subdued lately.
So for those of us who are waiting until after the meeting to have their dinner, the next
Carl,
agenda.
Carl, I did want to say I
Park Street.
did bring this. Oh, you can't see it because it's in the background.
Oh, you do have it. Your study material.
Now you have to explain to Robert.
Yes. See if I can.
All right.
It isn't showing up for some. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
There we go.
What, James? You're not actually on the list right now.
And I've got the trivia. I'm ready.
We're ready.
Yeah. So, Robert, when Jeff decides to mess with you because you're new, be prepared. Jeff, could you introduce 506 Park Street, please?
I shall. Thank you.
And
sir.
we are, just so you know, we're joined by Kareem and I think Bruce is on, Bruce Wardell, who represent this project.
So this is a COA request for 506 Park Street. This is within the North Downtown ADC district. And the First Presbyterian Church is designed in a colonial revival style, and it's based on James Gibbs's 1722 St. Martin in the Fields in London. It was constructed in 1954. The Fellowship Hall on 8th Street was constructed in 1986. Last summer, you all reviewed a somewhat extensive changes going on at the primarily on that east side, with the addition of a new gathering hall and exterior terrace. And there were some other changes going on towards the front of the church, I guess would be to the south of the sanctuary. And excuse me, this where we used to have a revision to a COA, this is a new request. And this is to, I'll use the word modify, but it's to modify what was approved last summer. And this is in that northeast corner where that addition was planned. That's being eliminated there. In fact, you can see in this drawing here, there's the arcade will be enclosed instead. A handicap access ramp will be built, and an elevator tower constructed at the rear of the sanctuary. And so it's, I was going to say, a relatively simple project. It's just making sure that everyone understands what's still in and what's not in relative to the prior work. So I think there's some questions about trees we're going to have to get into, but I don't, as far as what's been proposed, there's nothing here that that staff felt was problematic. There's some clarifications we've received from the applicant that I think you all should discuss. For example, the in the elevator tower, we had at the back of the sanctuary, you can see there's the, I don't know if it's a stone sill or a painted sill, but there's a yeah, that image there to add sills to those insets. And what is, you know, by the way, Jody and Carl and Tim, what's the proper architectural term for those insets or those recessed panels? I always call it, well, we get to that.
Blind windows.
Okay, thank you. And so there's that situation. Then there was a, yeah, I think those two, the lighting and the clarification on the not the light, I'm sorry, the sills and the clarification on the landscaping were the two things that we wanted to, that staff wanted you all most to make sure we're clear on. We have no problem with this one and, you know, recommend approval otherwise. So any questions for me? Okay.
Bruce or Kareem, do you have anything to add?
I'm happy
yeah.
to go. Oh, I'm sorry, Bruce. I'm just happy to go to any page as necessary.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of background on this just to set the stage. You know, this is certainly a function of the sequence that these things happen in which early in the project we bring something that we need approval for to get other things going, and it's a combination of understanding the ultimate costs of that addition, combined with what is a unique opportunity for the church. The addition was actually phase 2 and 3 of a 4 and 5 phase plan. The later phases were in fact renovation of the interior of the building, and the combination of finding that the costs of the addition were higher than we had expected, along with a relatively unique opportunity to be able to renovate a building when it's not being used, particularly for a church. That's always an issue that you have to wrestle with. How do you keep the thing going while you're doing major work inside? And so within the last 2 or 3 months, the church decided to take the opportunity to do the interior renovation of the church, a comprehensive interior renovation of the church, and then make this addition actually the phase 5 of the addition. So this is really an effort to put in place obviously the interior renovation, but then also allow for the future construction of the addition as we had envisioned it initially. The one thing that means, well, the major thing that means architecturally is that arcade that is currently open gets enclosed as a sort of entry from the parking lot. And it also, they did not want to put off the accessibility of the entire building. So it is one of these kind of odd situations in which we have to place an elevator that is waiting for the building to surround it. There isn't really that gracious of a way to do that. And so the way that we've done it in this case is we have taken up the language that existed on the building already, in which these blind windows existed actually right in the place where the elevator is, and then enclosed the arcade with, and then to leave the existing colonnade. And leaving the existing colonnade does a number of things. It certainly preserves the access to the building there. It creates a very logical and identifiable entry. We will add the accessibility to that colonnade, and it also separates from the street what will ultimately become an area that inevitably children will be playing in. And so there's a kind of architectural barrier between what will be a play yard and the street itself. The landscaping in that area is obviously relatively minimal, simply because it is a placeholder for a future addition. I think one of the things that we discussed just very recently was the removal of a number of trees and the identification of trees along the roadway, the driveway that goes from the upper parking lot to the lower parking lot. So the part of the site plan that will be done, that is currently under review from the city, is the originally planned connection from the upper parking lot to the lower parking lot. And you can see that I think there's another drawing in the submission that shows that. And that street, that drive from the upper parking lot to the lower parking lot will include the trees that were originally identified for the ultimate site plan. So there are some initial pieces of that site plan. Yeah, so you can see the road from the upper parking lot. I don't know whether I can I get control?
Unfortunately, Bruce, the city communication staff developed a policy where only staff can control.
Okay, well, if you will touch that, let's see, if you will touch that drive that goes from the upper parking lot, you got your place right there. The trees from the original site plan, and I think Jeff may have the diagram of where those trees are in the original site plan. They will be planted during this phase of the work. There are no changes to the interior courtyard. There are no changes that we will continue. We will build the front terrace that is on Park Street, and there are no changes to that. I'm trying to think what else we ought to clue you into. I think that is about it. What have I missed, Kareem?
I think that is all. We had some questions on the handrails earlier from staff, and I think it'll just be painted the same as approved in the initial phase 2, the painted black. I think this is it.
Yeah, on the handrails, my sense was it was going to be what matched the ADA entrance that was. Oh, and Kareem, could you need to get closer to your microphone? There you go. But there was the ADA entrance that was added, I think 2 years ago, and there was a metal railing associated with that. That this would be similar. That my understanding.
Yes.
That's correct. Which matches the conditions around the building.
And I assume everybody received the email from Jeff that was, I think Kareem responded to a series of questions.
And I included that in an updated version of the packet. It should be the last few pages of the application.
Did I miss that?
No, but if you have the packet right now online instead of downloaded on your computer, it should be, yeah.
Aha, okay. So the public has it.
Yeah.
I think we answered another last minute question about, there was a question on the maple that you guys had, and that is staying. That is not being removed.
I'm sorry, Kareem. I'm gonna turn my volume up a bit. Could you say that again?
I don't know why it's. I need to get really close, I think. There was a question on, I think, the maple tree that Jeff and Robert had asked us about, and that is that does not need to be removed for the new grading. So that tree would be staying.
Could we confirm which one that is, just so in plan? Understand.
All right, so if you look at the on the right hand side, the 4 London plane tree, above the second one, you can see a tree there. Now it with the I mean, London plane tree is essentially a sycamore. There's that probably I don't know, the 30-something inch maple. I don't know how London plane tree manages an understory tree or whatever, but that was all I asked. Is that staying or going, or was it something we had reviewed last summer? I couldn't recall, but I just wanted to make sure that didn't slip by and everybody wondered what happened.
Yes, Bruce, I don't know if you want to talk to that. I have some information from our civil. I think that tree was it was mislabeled on the drawing. That we have an image of it. It looks closer to a 12-inch, not a 30. I think it was labeled as a 24-inch. It's a lot smaller than it looks.
And any tree that we do preserve is going to be preserved temporarily because it would be within the work of the addition.
And also for clarification, I keep saying 8th Street, and this is actually 7th Street down that side. So I'm going to drive the little Google man down there now, and if you want to, you all can take a look at that. But there it is.
It's the one back by the building, right?
I think it's actually, if you look to the right some more, it's not this big tree. It's that one you see behind it, by that white fence thing.
I think you're right. All right, I'm like, I got so many things open, I can't figure out which one is.
It's that one.
Green,
yeah, I believe so.
This one, okay.
So that one's going to go, or that one will stay?
That one, evidently that one could stay from the grading plan, but it certainly, it would be my preference that we institute the new planting of the new trees.
Right.
And just start with that. And, that would be my preference.
Okay, and then the other 3 trees that were slated for removal will also go, including the large one, correct?
Yes, and that has to do with the grading necessities.
Right.
All right, yeah, and those were all destined to, they were okayed for removal Essentially what you're seeing with the trees with this is identical to what we saw last summer. There's obviously some plants, lower plantings that probably due to some budget constraint. But as far as trees go, what we're seeing is the same thing that we saw last summer. And I'm glad you pointed out that that is definitely not a 30-some inch maple back there. Thank you, Kareem. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Kareem, Bruce, are you guys, is that your presentation?
I think so.
Great. Yeah, I think we already went into questions, but are there any questions from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
I'm not seeing questions, Carl.
All right, thank you. Other questions from the BAR?
I have some questions about the carbuncle.
You need a new architectural term.
Huh? No. So, I know the elevator is painful, Bruce. I just wondered, is that something that where it is right now, when the addition goes on, it's just totally absorbed and you don't see it again, right?
Yes, that's right. It will be surrounded by the addition.
So I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, for instance, is there any harm in taking it up to pick up at least the window band? I don't know. I just don't know how to make it more innocuous.
Yeah,
Curious.
we had a series of discussions about where that thing would stop.
Sure.
You know, did you want to take it all the way up to the rake of the building? Unfortunately, the technical clearances that we need won't let us take it down to the belt course.
Right.
You know, the height of the thing is kind of right in the middle. And so that's why we introduced the belt course, and then tried to do as plain vanilla a top to the thing as we could.
I mean, would it make it any better just to take it at least to the top of the windows, so it's mimicking the other windows, and just put a flat roof on it and call it a day?
We probably could do that. Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems like it's actually drawing more attention to itself than, I mean, and I feel very sorry for you. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to make life difficult. I'm just wondering if there's a way to just minimize it more, get rid of that white band, and just take it up to the window and give it a flat roof and call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a design issue that we're going to fall on our sword for. So
right.
we are happy to design this by consensus.
You would also, just by doing that, you would get rid of the appearance and having to disguise the window that you're needing to brick in.
Yeah.
And just that little roof that doesn't really make sense.
Because actually there isn't a white band and over the jack arches, there actually isn't any, the model's a little off, right? Because there's really nothing happening up there in the main gable. Is there in the pictures?
See, I'm pulling it up on I'm seeing your faces. I'm going to pull up my own copy of the thing so I can look at what you guys are looking at. Oh, there we go. Okay.
It looks like there is a trim board up there, a fairly large, wide trim board right above the window heads.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up the photo of the actual thing.
It looks like it might be a pent eave even, is it?
There is the trim at the rake for the gable goes all the way across, and then there's simply a sort of half round window in the gable.
Right. The model's a little funky in that regard, but I don't know. I just wondered if there was some way to just minimize it even more.
You know, I think you could make a strong argument for bringing it up to the trim that's just above the third story windows.
Yep.
That's, yeah.
And I don't even know if I bothered putting any anything much more exotic than what you already have down in that middle band and move that middle band up and
Yeah,
call it a day.
yep.
I mean,
I agree.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
be cheaper.
Yeah, right. And I do think it makes sense to put the little cast stone sill, you know. I mean, when the addition is done, the east side, we know that the east side of this wall will still be exposed inside. The north side may be exposed. So, you know, that sill would be a part of the addition when that's done. So. Yeah, I'm certainly amenable to those modifications.
Yeah, I'm not trying to design anything. I just think it needs to be more in
Yeah,
keeping and less attention to itself.
Yeah, there were so few options of what to do with a, you know, an 8x8 by 3-story tall, you know, brick tower. You can't hide it. You know, a lot of green screen and all that
totally
kind of stuff.
empathize. Yep, I totally empathize.
Yeah.
Seeing as we seem to be moving right on into comments,
that was a question comment.
Get into designing versus building for him. Are there any comments from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
I don't see anything, Carl.
Okay, carry on. Sorry.
I just want to confirm that the change of the door entry to the arcade has been moved back one bay so that we can delete the fenestration that was in that arch facing 7th Street.
Yes.
I see it in the packet as sort of an appendix, but that is certainly a great improvement, I think.
Yeah, we moved it back, and it gave us 2 open arches and also gave us an outside space to, you know, shake off your umbrella and that kind of thing.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
Good.
Mr. Chair, I should have acknowledged up front. I'm a member of this church, but I'm not involved in this process. Don't have a personal interest defined by Virginia law in the outcome of this vote, so I believe I can participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
I have a question, comment. I just I have a few questions about just how the site plan will work. I don't have any concern with the architecture whatsoever, but just knowing how kids get dropped off here for school and wondering also how people might move from the lower parking lot up to any portion of the building. It seems like the ADA ramp is a kind of a really tortured way to enter that pavilion. And I just wonder how you guys were thinking about that, or if the stairs still need to be removed. It just seems like very gonna be replacing a lot of grass.
I think in the most recent version, both stairs will still be there. Both stairs from walk to the pavilion will be there.
Okay.
And we thought that starting the ramp at that point, as opposed to kind of down the sidewalk and that kind of thing, made sense. And it's kind of like the most efficient path. So it really is more of a pragmatic piece there. It's not going to have any real architecture to it. It really is kind of as unstated a path up there. And it's Kareem, what did you say? It's an 8% slope? So it will have handrails on both sides.
And Breck, the entrance to the preschool is further down on 7th Street. It's been moved as of about a year and a half ago or so.
Okay, right.
So they no longer share an entrance as they historically did.
Okay. And what about passage from the parking lot up through to the front of the building or towards Park Street?
Right. That road will be graded exactly the way it was proposed last summer. There will be, in the site plan, there will be bollards that will control the ability to go between those during the week. They can cut off access between the two levels or open access between the two levels as fits the function that they're doing. And so the grading for that roadway is just what it was.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, or I think this probably is ready for a motion. I would recommend with that motion that the elevator be a recommendation that Bruce look into finding a that he investigate changing the height, that we don't design it for him. But that's my 2 cents.
Just one last quick thing on it's the last page of the packet. There's a window sample that the note does say it's not the final sample or anything like that, but it doesn't match the Muntin profile. I'm just wondering if once they find a window that does match the historic Muntin profile, if that could be submitted to staff for verification.
That's certainly agreeable to us.
If you zoom in on it, the historic window has sort of a 3-step Muntin profile, kind of colonial revival.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to confirm, are you because it looks like the window notes say that you're going to use a putty style Muntin. Is that the intention, is to
you're catching me a little off guard here in that I'm not sure where we are with Pella right now. Kareem, do you know where we are with Pella and the profile of the Muntins?
Not really. No, we have to work out the new.
Yeah, I think we, it's been a little bit of a it's been a while that we were working with Pella Windows to get a profile that more closely matched the existing profile on the building. And I'll have to admit, I don't know what their current response is.
Sure.
So I think we approved this before. I believe this page was in the last submittal. Am I correct on that?
This is not, this is not new information.
Right.
Um,
I should know, does this relate to infilling the arcade?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the windows now, and infilling the arcade is what we're looking at, right?
Right. And again,
the windows you're matching are ones from an addition that was added relatively recently, correct?
Yeah, well, actually, the windows would match that. What we were actually trying to match is the configuration of the details from the front windows that face Park Street.
Okay.
It's a little bit different fenestration configuration, but we were looking to approximate those those proportions.
Me personally, that's not going to hold me up.
Yeah, that wouldn't mind tension. I'm not trying to hold things up either.
All right, I can break protocol and make the motion unless someone can find it before me.
Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed alterations at 506 Park Street satisfy the BAR's criteria and are compatible with this property and other properties in the North Downtown ADC district, and that the BAR approves the application as submitted with this recommendation, that the apparent height or the height as shown of the elevator be reconsidered, and that the white banding around the elevator be reconsidered, and changes made if the designer agrees that or decides to do so. How's that?
I'll second that.
It was beautiful.
Oh, you tease.
Okay, so with the motion seconded, I'll go ahead and call a vote. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Zemer,
Yes. Aye.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. McClure,
Aye.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
and Miss Lewis.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The motion passes 9-0.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Kareem.
All right. Next on our agenda is 500 Court Square.
One moment, I need to figure out who to add to this. I guess Jeff can start, but then I'll promote
So-
the panelists.
This is a, excuse me, a COA request for replace 4 windows in an apartment at 500 Court Square. This is, the building is in the North Downtown ADC district that is contributing. It was colonial revival, 9-story brick building. This was originally the Monticello Hotel, designed by architect Stanhope Johnson of Lynchburg, constructed in 1924, 1926. It's also a contributing structure in the Charlottesville-Albemarle County Courthouse Historic District, listed on the Virginia Landmarks Register and the National Register of Historic Places. We've had some, BAR has reviewed some other things at this site. Most recently, some security gates. Had to go back to 2011, the last BAR review related to windows, windows within an apartment. And back in July 2011, BAR approved the replacement of 9 existing wood windows in a 6th floor unit facing Market Street, approved with aluminum clad window sash kits and an applied mutton that matched. And excuse me, from reading Mary Joy's staff report, it was clear that there have been replacements over the years that have not gone to the BAR. And the comment at that time was that when this was approved, it really the city recommended to the, and I'm not sure how the ownership works over there, the homeowners group, basically to come up with a plan for when windows are replaced, what is it that we want? Possibly, this is an example, possibly July 2011 is an example. that's one side of it. But the other, of course, is with the replacement of windows. And I will say I'm getting a lot of questions in the last couple of months about window replacements, and I've been repeatedly pushing the point to people that repairing windows is a lot less expensive than replacing them, and that kind of fits the bill here. What I am looking at is some water infiltration, that probably more having issues with the sill and the window frame than with the sash, and possibly something could be fixed with some repairs to the sill and better caulking and maybe storm windows on the exterior. This is the south side. We all know that's the heavy weather side of any building in Charlottesville, particularly if it's up in the air like this one is. So that was all, my recommendation wasn't necessarily yes or no to replacements, but that, from a cost standpoint, I don't know if it's necessarily the right solution, and simply replacing the windows may not fix the problem that they're having with water infiltration. That said, if the BAR does approve this, I think it's an opportunity to sort of express a standard that we, not approving requests that come in for 500 court square, but certainly expressing maybe what would be expected in an application, and what is acceptable as a replacement, at least the criteria for that. Among that, certainly we have conditions reviews where with insulated glass and applied grills, that the grills are the same dimensions, the same light configurations, the same alignments with the spacer bar within the insulated glass. And with that, yeah, that covers everything that I said, and I'll hand it off to, I'm not sure.
Jeff, I'm sorry I didn't bring your attention to this earlier, but we've been in contact with Doug Brooks, who represents the Condo Owners Association. And I hadn't heard from him, and he also hasn't joined the call. So it doesn't look like there's an applicant ready to represent this project.
Yeah, that's what's right. It's a bit of the circumstances are, I know that it's the owner of the apartment makes the request. I don't know if he owns the windows or, how condominiums work, or is this the building itself? But all right, well, sorry, I guess I would leave it all to you to.
I think legally the association is responsible for replacing them. That's common in condominium schemes, especially of this type.
Okay. And so I guess I'll leave it in your hands, however you all would like to proceed. Why does Sherry have a floating O on her screen? What is that?
Does she?
It's a reflection, I think, behind
okay.
her. Yeah.
I still,
my office too dark.
So this is an important issue that we don't want individual condo owners to come in and start replacing windows differently from one to the other. It needs to be thought holistically, and I think a case needs to be made that there's something wrong with the windows holistically before we start agreeing to a standard for replacing them. So I'm not ready to proceed with any until we get some clarification on who's making the application here, and who owns the windows, and how are the windows on all sides of the building, and are they is this chronic for all the windows, these problems, or is it just one situation?
Yes, I agree. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I have represented this condominium association in the past, and I can speak with assurance that the windows are considered part of the common elements. And that responsibility for that is shared with all of the unit owners within the building, and their residential and commercial. And I don't know how it's split up. I couldn't, but that Mr. Brooks is the man, he's the president of real property, and they're the community manager, a licensed community manager for common interest associations.
I
was just going to add that it's very similar to the condo that my wife and I own up in DC. The windows are owned by the association, and that what you really need to have is them have a common standard and come to us and ask us if that common standard is appropriate for that building. As an association, not as individual owners.
Yeah, and the application came from Doug Brooks, and wasn't there, Sherry, wasn't there someone a couple years ago? Is Doug new, or was another name?
No, I think he's community managed this for a very long time. At least his company has. There might be other individuals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It just didn't sound like the same guy that I talked to about the railing.
I actually just tried to text him and just said it would be helpful if he could get on. He thought a member of the condominium board was going to attend. So
yeah,
he might.
So the owner. Yeah.
We've got another item on the agenda. Why don't we do that, and then hopefully he can come on, because I think we do need to have a conversation with him.
Okay.
So it looks like David Mullen, who I think is representing 735 Northwood, is already on the call. So I'm going to go ahead and promote David, and we can move on to that.
Sorry, Jeff, you're on again.
Not sorry, I'm trying to.
You finding it, yeah.
Now my computer's yelling back at me things. No, it's not a problem. And the applicant, just to let you know that the apartment owner and the property manager both signed the application. So it came in, building owner is aware of this, but yeah, it would help to know who's who. All right, we're now jumping ahead to 735 Northwood Avenue. This is a COA request for the addition of a rear dormer, and probably more critically is the request to install photovoltaic shingles in replacement of the existing asphalt. This house was built in 1931. It is in the North Downtown ADC district. It is considered contributing. Oh, sorry, I'm reading my version of this, and it's, thank you, Robert, for cleaning some gibberish up. Said this is a COA request for construction of rear dormer, replacement of the existing asphalt shingles with photovoltaic shingles, and replacement of the gutters and downspouts. And they want to, I think it's a sort of a standard seamless gutters. They want to go with copper gutters and downspouts. And so I think everything's fine with the rear addition, and certainly with copper. I put this on the regular agenda. I'm so intrigued by the roof shingles, and felt it probably deserved the discussion we're going to have about it. And as I mentioned at the beginning, earlier before we started, that we don't have a sample. I know that the applicant's trying to get a hold of one, and we'll figure out how to take a look at it. And I guess they can better also address if what their schedule is as far as moving forward. Does more important to get the okay and move forward the dormer, maybe separate out the shingles. I don't know, but I put that on the table. So again, not really any issues with this one. More curious than anything, and I hand it back to you, and I think the applicant's ready to speak.
Yeah, so the shingles, we're kind of waiting to hear back from Tesla on whether we could get a sample of the photovoltaic shingles. And I think they were sort of more concerned about whether we would get approval on the dormer and whether they could move forward with coming up with a design and giving us a design for the Tesla panels that we would then approve, and they would like to do that after the approval of by the bar of the basic plan of the dormer. So I think we'd get more engagement with them after we've got a sort of go ahead on the basic plan for the dormer. But right now we don't have the ability. I mean, we don't have a sample yet of the photovoltaic panel, other than what information you can already find online about it.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, well, are there any questions from the public? Please raise your hand and press *9. Do we have
Doesn't
any?
look like it. Nope. Not really. No.
Okay. Questions from the BAR? Seems pretty straightforward. Just in case, are there any comments from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
Nope.
Okay. Comments from the board?
I'm not sure the interior configuration, but on the rear dormer, I feel like the two side windows should be a little bit closer to the center window. Just from kind of Palladian window standpoint. Proportions. The next, there's a slide that has it dead on. Yep, there you go.
Yeah, that's certainly possible to move them in a little bit.
As to the roof shingles, I think this is kind of an ideal situation where the roof shingles themselves will be able to conform pretty closely, as I understand that system, to the roof shape. So in this instance, I think this would be a great example, I think, of a solar installation that pretty carefully preserves the roof shape and appearance. I'm excited to see it.
I do have a question with regard to why they're reluctant to not move forward before the dormer is approved. Is it a project that how is that working? Are they leasing the shingles to you? I don't quite understand what the arrangement is.
From what I understand is that they typically want to start the process with an approved permit, and they'll start with us earlier, but
they want us to approve the shingles as well, then, is what you're saying?
No, I think, I mean, well, ideally, yeah, but I don't think that they're requiring that.
Ron, I think it's the design work that they'd have to put in engineering the circuitry. Probably they want to make sure they have a project in hand before they, because David, is that, I don't mean to speak for you, but
I think yeah, so I mean, if I think they're more, I'm not really, I don't really know that I can speak for Tesla, but the way I interpret it is that what they're trying to do is get a fixed plan from us that they can then give us a design for.
I agree with Breck. I think this will be a fantastic test case, and a good example that we could then use for if other people wanted to do this. Personally, I think assuming that what the imagery that's on Tesla's website is pretty close to what you get, the design work is more of just, I don't know. I'm not really sure what the design work would be. I guess the electronic portion of it. I probably could approve the shingles tonight, and just that you'd submit the final shingle design to Jeff to make sure there's no surprises in there. I don't know if anyone else feels.
I agree with you.
Well, I mean, I looked through the website also, the Tesla website, and I had ended up with more questions, and I started with the construction of putting purlins in, and anyway, I found it to be more uninformative than informative, or more trying to anyway, I did not find the images or the information to help me at all. And I have more issues with the shingles than I do with the dormer. I mean, I'd like to see a sample. I'd like to, I worry that there's a reflection from the Tesla shingles. And I'd love to see, do we know, are there any examples of the shingles in the area that have been installed?
I think there aren't, because they're actually just in the process of expanding where they'll install shingles. So that would be a new thing for our area. And then, yeah, the website, I'm not really sure what's represented on the website as well, because I think they're currently on the 3rd generation of the design of the shingles themselves. So there may be, I'm not sure if there's some photos or some diagrams on the website that are actually an older system that's not how they do it anymore. So
yeah, I would suggest that if they do get installed, that it's done in such a way that they can be replaced, because I can't imagine that these are going to be, that they're going to last as long as an asphalt shingle roof.
I share Jody's concern. This house is located close to my house, and the way that the topo falls down from Northwood down to 2nd, and you can actually see this house, especially right now in the winter. I can see it from my home. You can see the front walkway of my home in the top left-hand corner of the aerial photo, and that's 2nd Street. But this especially is very visible to the properties that are on Robertson Lane. If you look sort of, it's really north of this property. I was woken up at 3 o'clock one morning when the dog in this house, it doesn't bias me, but I could hear the dog in this house inside of my house with all the windows closed. And they had a dog outside, and I don't know the owners, but and I only say that because I'm not biased against this application, but that because of the topo, this house sits very high up, and there are houses under it that can clearly, I love that we're experimenting with this on the back of a building, but I'm just telling you, there are homes that can see this very easily, and I'll be able to see it from mine. So I am curious what the material looks like, and we don't have any samples. And I think during COVID, we've sort of glossed over this, not being able to share, tactile look at samples and pass them around in a meeting. And that's one downside of the current circumstances, but I also feel like we do need to have a little bit more information about this, even if we aren't able to share it, otherwise in person. So I very much support it, but I just love to see what they look like. And I do think that there could be some impact on the neighbors below them.
yeah, I mean, I think so. You're right. There are houses down the street that are exposed to 735 Northwood, because there's not much tree cover in that direction. And then to the south and to the east, there's more tree cover. And I think the building directly across the street from 735 Northwood is a garage for a house on Park Street, and another house close by. So that is a question, what the glare properties are of the tiles themselves. So that would be more information that we.
Can I ask, would this only be on the front, the south facing, just for so the
the actual solar panels would be on the front. and the system combines solar panels with other tiles that don't have the solar panel in them, but are aesthetically, the same format. So it blends and fills the roof out. But the units at the edge where they need to cut the panel in the factory those don't have photovoltaic arrays in them. It's only the full panels that you see in the roof.
Sorry to interrupt. I just think about what Sherry was saying.
Hey, Jeff, yeah, I think I misunderstood the application, so thank you.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't. I think you are still clear that the whole roof is going to look the same, right?
Right.
Okay. And the front elevation shows, you can see on the upper roof, the full roof is the Tesla solar roof shingle system.
Well, I guess to try and maybe make this a little easier, is there anybody, considering James's comment on the windows, does anybody have any concerns on the dormer? Okay, great. Is there anybody who would not consider solar shingles?
I just would need to know really what they are just like Jody and Sherry are saying. I mean, there looks like there's a scale issue with them possibly as drawn.
I think that scale looks like it was on the website. So unless they've been redesigned, that's what we'll be seeing.
That's 15 inches by 43, which is what they have on the website.
Right. So that's kind of I'm just saying, like, that would be a really big slate. Right. So that just they look kind of clunky a little bit, but if they're not drawing attention to themselves, that might not be an issue. It's just a question. I mean, if they're super shiny and they're really big, it might I think we just need a sense of what they are.
Yeah, and
not to be so sticky about it, but I think the other folks have got a point.
The renderings on the website kind of, sorry.
I was just going to ask other members of the BAR, are there any other houses in any of the historic districts that have other forms of solar power installed on their roofs at this point? And has that been allowed in the past?
Not facing a street that I know of.
Yeah, the only ones I think we're familiar with are mostly been over in Martha Jeff neighborhood. I know that there's been some commercial applications that are below parapets, roofs, and not even something you can see. But no, on a residential scale, and we did have a project, I think, a year ago. Someone built an array in their backyard. I think over on Ridge Street, it was there. But no, I haven't seen anything like this. I it's one of those things. It's kind of been a unicorn, and now it's suddenly real. So there is some excitement about it. But
I'm going to propose that we make a motion to approve the dormer so that the design work can then happen. And then I don't know how the procedure would work for you, Jeff, whether he comes back and it's an amendment or if it's a new COA, whatever it is. But I think since it sounds like we need more information to fully approve the shingles, let's get this thing moving. Does that make sense to everyone?
I think that's the wise course. The only solar power project I was involved is the one at Campbell Hall when I worked at facilities, and there's still no solar panels on there. But the problem was how do you anchor these things onto a 30-year-old, 40-year-old concrete roof with copper. I remember the facilities director saying, if Bill McDonough explains to me how he's going to put holes in my roof, we'll think about it. But it really is the attachment is the challenge. And what Jody said about possibly purlins or framing up, there might be some construction details related to this that come out. I think that Dave will have to deal with. And so I think it makes sense to to treat it separately, and let's see what comes out of their design effort and where it goes from there.
Mr. Mullen, you're still okay with this?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And actually, Justin Pincham just logged in. He was in another meeting, but he's also representing 735 Northwood. Don't know if you can.
I'm sorry, what
connect
was
him
the
in at this-
name, David? Is it
Justin Pincham.
Justin, sure. I'm promoting him now.
And Mr. Chair, just a clarification while he's being promoted. Nobody has any, when you said proposed dormer, you're including the copper gutters and downspouts too?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hey, no. Just wanted to
So
make
the
sure.
only issue is the roof tiles.
Yes. And it's just an issue of needing more information. So it looks like Justin's on. Justin, if you have anything you want to add, we just need some more. I think we're all supportive of the idea. Just would like to know a little more about the tiles.
Okay, I'm interested to know if you've seen any Tesla tiles anywhere else in Charlottesville yet, because this will be our first go with it. So we're learning alongside you guys, if that's the case.
Yeah, that's just nothing I've seen before. I think when you were signing on it, like really, it's really exciting, but it's probably more questions than anything. So no, what we've seen has been the traditional, glass panels that are roof mounted, and in those cases, the primary concern I've talked to folks has been, make sure your underlying roof is in good shape before you spend a lot of money putting panels on it. Because if you're at the year 25 of a 30-year shingle, fix that before putting the panels on it. This obviously solves that problem, or appears to. But no, I haven't seen anything, and hopefully this is the nose of the camel, as they'd say, and we're going to see more.
Okay, I mean, our understanding is that it resembles a fully slated roof is the look they're going for, but without actually seeing a physical sample. And David, you'd actually asked Tesla for that, and we haven't had a positive reply yet, right? In terms of actually getting a physical sample.
No, not yet. If they're unable to give us a physical sample in a reasonable time, would some sort of actual photographs and specification drawings of the tiles suffice? And especially some documentation about glare and what that material does as far as glare.
I think that would be fun. Sure.
Yeah, or spec sheets or whatever is available, yeah.
And I think, so my understanding from looking at their website was that the process is they lay down a kind of a membrane roof, and then they fasten the shingles on top of that. I think Jody was asking about purlin, so we'd be curious to know if is there an extra structural piece in there that thickens up the roof, or is it literally just solar shingles fastened down on top of the membrane? So is it thin or is it extra thick? Would be something that we'd want to know.
Right.
And I can imagine why Tesla is not sending samples to every person considering a project. They probably very protective, and they're probably not cheap. But I do think that if it helps your case, that this is going to be a really important test case for Charlottesville. I think it will, have the capacity to demonstrate that this is an appropriate way of integrating solar in a historic district. If this board feels that they can't get to that decision, I can't imagine probably a better kind of installation in Charlottesville. I can imagine a lot of really bad places where this product would not be a good idea, or with roofs that are much more complex that won't happen. So if it can't happen here, I don't know where does it happen in Charlottesville. So I think this is a really important question, and if that helps you get a sample, I hope it will.
David, do you have a sense of the tiles that would need to be cut in a normal roof installation, if those are then just glass tiles that look like the Tesla tile, or?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, so again, there's been, from what I've read, there's been 3 generations so far of the Tesla tile in development. And I think with previous generations, those tiles would actually be field cut. And I think from what I've read, it sounds like now they're cut in the factory. So everything's planned out and cut off site and brought to site. But only the tiles that are uncut have photovoltaics in them, as I understand it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, 2 perspectives, if this helps the BAR. One, I think if the house, the top of my street up there on Park, that 2.5 years ago, they put the copper roof on and about blinded me every time I walked by. So we've approved bright, shiny things up on roofs. From that perspective, I think the way I'm thinking about it is when the faux slate shingles that just simply look so completely different, but those are that's in lieu of real slate. So you sort of have that comparison that you have to get past. This is a house that is 20th century. It has asphalt shingles on it. So we're not looking to replicate a slate roof or cedar shakes or something like that. So, but I think maybe the uniformity of these, but I think that's something you could see in an image. There's my 2 cents, if those help.
Okay.
I mean, I think it might end up being a lot nicer looking than an asphalt shingle roof. Don't get me wrong. I just think we just need to have a slight, I mean, looking at the website, I mean, it looks nice. We need some hands-on facts about it. That's all. And yeah, copper roofs are really bright for not that long, Jeff.
And it's up to the applicant to provide us that information, is what we're avoiding saying.
Understood.
Well, and just, this should not change what happens tonight, but Ron did put a really interesting link in the chat that, has a lot more information than I was able to find before. All right, so with that, I guess, you mind if I just go ahead and make a motion? Is there any more conversation that we want to have? Okay. So, having considered the standards set forth in the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find the proposed dormer at and gutter and downspouts at 735 Northwood Avenue satisfies the Bay Area's criteria and is compatible with this property and other properties in the North Downtown ADC district. And the BAR approves those portions of the application as submitted. We are not approving the shingles at this moment.
Are we also going to suggest that the windows be moved?
Sorry. Yes, and we recommend that the windows on the dormer, this 2 side windows, facing the back elevator or on the back elevation of the dormer, move closer to the center.
So they're flanking so it's more of a Palladian window. That's a tripartite window and not just like 3 windows separated.
Or at least, I don't know what's going on.
At least
they're really
yeah, they don't necessarily have to be a true Palladian window, but perhaps equidistant spacing between the center window and the side windows, and then the side windows and the edge of the dormer.
Are there walls in there? Is that what's driving that? The separation?
It's actually it's actually the plan inside has changed around a little bit, but yes, it was originally driven by where walls were, but the walls have actually changed, so I could easily make that equidistant. That would be no problem.
I think it just looked better. My opinion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, James. I'll go ahead and call a vote. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Zemer,
Yes.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Mr. McClure,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Miss Lewis.
Aye.
Thank you. So the motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now going back to Court Square.
And it looks like Doug Brooks has joined us, so I'm going to go ahead and promote him. And thank you, David and Justin.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brooks, for signing on.
Sorry about that. Thank you for waiting.
Do we need to reintroduce this or?
I feel like we've already received a staff report on this.
Okay, good.
Maybe Jeff, it seemed like Jeff had some questions that maybe Mr. Brooks could answer. But ownership and responsibility for maintenance and history and all that stuff.
Hey, Doug, how you doing?
Hey, Jeff.
It was you I talked to about those security gates, right?
I believe so. It was either me or Kevin O'Brien.
That's who. That's who.
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out who it was. All right. You know, this came up just briefly, and you read what was in the report. This had come up back in 2011, and Mary Joy was asking, well, what is sort of our standard? And the question was kind of like, all right, well, who is this something that and in this case, it's an individual apartment owner who's asked to do this, or is this something that that the building itself, you all look to do as part of a comprehensive project for everything? Because I think, there have been some mix and matches over there. But if there's something, there's a grand plan in place, that makes it a lot easier to say, all right, here's the what we want to address. Or is this, when an owner says we're going to do something, and so the BAR then needs to be prepared for that kind of piecemeal approach. I guess trying to weigh how do you see that moving forward?
Thank you. And by the way, thank you, Jeff. You're so super helpful when we were trying to put this together. And the quick answer is that unfortunately it's the latter from what we can determine. It's a condominium, mixed use condominium, and the common elements and declaration is such that the windows are actually considered part of the unit, which makes it challenging in that then the condominium association is more or less left with, in essence, doing architectural review itself and then approving a certain appearance and standard that it could impose. However, since I came on board, which was after the 2011 application by one of the owners, our answer has been, stop, you can't do anything. We're in a historic district. We need BAR approval. We went through that with BAR when we repainted did our balustrade and rooftop, et cetera. And we know that folks had kind of slipped through the cracks prior to 2011 somehow, just doing the replacements on their own, slipping it by the board of directors there. It was self-managed from 1978 until 2014, 13. So I think that's how a lot of that occurred. So the quick answer, Jeff, and to the BAR is that the association would love to set a standard. And I see in the notes that 2011 kind of set that standard with the, French vanilla and the divided light with spacer grills. So I was intrigued when I got that. I'd never seen that documentation. So there's no plan in place from an owner and association perspective to do a group project all at once. But I think the association would love a standard that it could then apply. And then, of course, the applicant, whether it be the building and or the owner together, would have to run it by ARB to confirm that, you know, we're conforming with the approved standard. That's kind of a huge rundown response, but does that make any sense?
Yes, that makes good sense. Thank you. So with that in mind, I guess first, just for protocol, are there any questions from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9. Is there any public?
Yes,
Okay.
but I'm not expecting any questions. So.
Okay.
No, there are no questions.
All right. Thank you. Questions on the board?
I have one. And this is to the David. Has a survey by an engineer or a professional been done of the windows around the building, all the building's windows?
Is that for me? No, I'm not aware of any. This is Jody. Not aware of any survey. We have been, the association is responsible for exterior surfaces, caulking and painting. And just qualitatively, I can say that I believe around 80% to 90% of the windows are original.
Okay.
And all of the lower level windows from the 4th floor down are original.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm sorry, Doug. I apologize. I did not remember your name correctly. Sorry. So, do you have? Is there complaints from the owners about the windows generally and all in the entire building?
Actually, few and far between. I think that some of the folks that have renovated their units without applying may have had those complaints. What we saw, I asked immediately for documentation as to why the request, and they provided a home inspection report. And essentially what we see, and I also saw in the notes from, or maybe a note from Jeff, I think it was a misdiagnosis by, one of our infamous home inspectors as to why they're seeing water damage. I think that's from condensation. We have old windows that aren't low E, beside, in essence, a cold water coil and fan system like you used to have in hotels back in the 50s. Yeah. And so you have cold air blowing against an original window, and it's moisture and condensation is what you're seeing there. But so I think owners are frustrated with the fact it's very difficult to clean or maintain or paint these from the inside. Certainly they don't tilt in, and then they feel cold air and have wet sills when it's really hot.
Good. Thank you for the clarification, Doug.
Yes, sir.
I just want to clarify. So you said all the windows from the 4th floor down are original, but in looking at the photos I took, the windows above that level, I'd say at least 50% have probably been replaced, if not more. Does that sound inaccurate to you, or they're kind of easy to pick out because they're bright white, but maybe that's paint.
I think, yeah, I don't want to challenge you on that, but I know we have been spending a great deal of time and my remaining energy on painting and caulking these windows. I'd be happy to follow up and do a more formal inspection on that.
Mm-hmm.
And we just haven't had the number of requests, honestly,
right.
It's been off the radar until Mr. Wispaway pushed it.
I guess for me, it might actually help the argument for replacements if there's, 10% of the windows to the condos are original and the rest are all new, but that's, yeah, I don't know. To me, it looked like there were a lot of replacements that had already been done. And yeah, as Jeff said, it looked like there's different types. And I'm not putting any blame on you. I recognize that this happened a long time ago. It just seems like it's already kind of a bit of a hodgepodge. But this one obviously does not meet our guidelines or our standards. And we've definitely been harsh to applicants. You've had much worse windows. So I don't think, unless anybody else wants to make a motion to approve this, I'm not sure that that's going to go anywhere, but maybe we could discuss what an appropriate standard for replacements would be should a window warrant replacement. That makes sense.
I mean, I know what Melanie would say.
Yes.
I mean, I think from my perspective, it really needs a full building report so we actually know what we're dealing with here. But it does seem dealing with it piecemeal, as Doug was saying, is kind of insane for something that's, one single building and clearly has, if they're trying to maintain it, it would be good for things to be consistent throughout. That's a real nightmare to have so many different systems going on. But I think philosophically replacing these windows, I understand the thermal performance issues, but that's also why you develop storm windows and things like that, especially if you're running air conditioning. I mean, this is, one of the conundrums of old buildings and modern HVAC technology, but it certainly doesn't help having the system blowing right on the windows. That's just like double jeopardy right there, the way those systems are set up.
Wouldn't it be appropriate at this point for us to ask for the building to try to come up with their own standards before anyone comes to us, that they actually hash this out in the condo meetings themselves, because and then come to us with a proposal as opposed to us designing it here for them at this point?
I would ask, let me just offer the questions that I've received, and again, they're numerous. And the first thing I say to people is, if the window needs to be replaced, picking something, that's the easy part. I said that the heavy lift is showing why a replacement window is needed. And the experience, not just, I said, my own and my builder days in my own house, but what I hear since I've been BAR staff is, number one, there's a perception that I'll save money. And I think working with that applicant down on Ridge Street 18 months ago, and working with the guy that was selling the windows, and these things were $1,500, $1,600 an opening. And I just was sort of staggered by that cost. And I've shared with people, my 1880s house, I took the sash out, got it stripped, got it reglazed, put it back in. Sure, they're old, they're not the most energy efficient, but I probably spent $100, $150 a window. That just simply, I may lose some in energy savings, but it's so cost wise, I marvel how that people believe that it's a savings. So that's one thing. But the question I would have for the BAR is, what is it that we need to see, or that staff needs to present to you all? The best one was when we 2.5 years ago went and walked that on the mall and went, okay, we see what we're looking at. But the criteria, trying to explain to someone what we want to see without saying we want to go into your home. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to express that. But that's, to me, is where you all have difficulty evaluating what it is, and I have difficulty expressing what people need to bring to the table. So
I feel like that is going to be a very long conversation that we probably need to have as part of the guideline review. to set a standard as what is a window that warrants replacement, because we do seem to we move that bar around a little bit. And it would be good to kind of figure out, or to set that bar at a good location, and a consistent location for each applicant. Does that make, Jeff, I don't mean to, dismiss what you just said, but does that make sense? Because I'm not sure we can solve that tonight.
No, we can't.
Okay.
No.
I mean, it does seem to me like also in terms of guidelines, it would be to, look at what UVA has done in reference to this very same problem, on large buildings, and, what has their approach been? Because it seems like there's a lot of intelligence there that, something, I mean, this building is kind of an odd man in a lot of ways in terms of Charlottesville. I mean, it's one of the biggest residential buildings downtown, and as Doug has pointed out, it doesn't really have a coherent approach to the some of the systems that compose the building. It's all been as one owner here, one owner there, and it's not being dealt with in a coherent way. Whereas UVA deals with large buildings, because it's an organization, it can do it. I don't know. It seems like we need to find a model for how. And I would think Jody might know some examples at the school where they would deal with a building this size. And
I can tell you at New Cabell Hall, all the windows were renovated, repaired, recaulked, restrung. They were taken out and repaired off-site in a shop, and then brought back and then reinstalled. These are the sash, and then the frames were repaired in place. So there's precedent there. It's been done. Then at the same time, for our dormitories, there's a different standard for dormitories. Unfortunately, they've ended up taking them out and replacing them. So it depends upon the building and the historic importance of it.
Right. So, I mean, I could see, for instance, with that in mind, see an argument that everything at street level, all the big windows, the grand windows in that building should be restored and kept as is. And then the residential portion moves to a more modern but consistent window type throughout.
Yeah.
For instance, I mean, infiltration is a big deal generally.
Well, first I'd like to have it established that there's a problem.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We need a survey. We by a professional, and need to be told that there's a problem and what the problem is, and then we could address it appropriately.
Hey, Doug, let me ask you a question. So if let's say there's an apartment owner that their windows have just, they're beat to hell and in bad shape. The BAR has the ability to say, that you can't have a building start to look like that. What is the what's the stewardship responsibility of the owner of the I think maintenance is one, starting point here. So, but if somebody just lets their windows go bad and then you have to replace them, it is the applicant paying for that, correct?
Yes. So our understanding of the governing documents is that the association is responsible for the exterior maintenance, defined as, caulking, sealing, and painting. However, the actual element itself is the property of the unit owner. And that's why we've, engaged in this, long-term caulking and painting program to alleviate those issues and to prevent them.
And y'all don't have storm windows, do you?
There's a couple.
That's correct, James. You do not.
There's a few that have storms.
There's some that have some screens too, but it's not uniform.
Do you think that would be up to the individual owners to install storm windows, or would that be a building?
Our reading is that would be a unit owner responsibility.
Gotcha.
James, I know that we tell homeowners to install storm windows to protect their historic windows. But when you look at the facade of this building and the few windows that have storm windows, they are the worst looking ones.
I mean, I feel like it's unfortunate that to some degree that the windows are the responsibility of the unit owners. I mean, that's the way y'all have your organization set up and structured, so I can't argue with it, but it's unfortunate. It seems to me like it's a part of the envelope of the building itself. And while I got the mic, I did just shared on the chat the link to the Secretary of the Interior standards, which definitely recommend repairing windows and installing storms as sort of the first line of defense. And I think it absolutely echoes what Jeff had pointed out, that it's a lot actually less expensive to repair than to replace.
And I'll point out that there are some decent interior storm windows too. They don't always have to be the exterior type.
Yeah, that is, I mean, to Tim's point, that is something that UVA has started to do quite a bit, is installing interior storms so that we don't detract from the historic character of the exterior, but we can achieve some, energy improvement and sustainability measures. We definitely did it at O'Neill Hall, the Rugby apartment building, and then most recently at Cars Hill. So that's another tactic.
Doug, just one more, sort of logistical question. When someone does something like this, do you have they bring in a crane, or do you dangle like a scaffolding over the side? What's the mechanism? I mean, I know windows cost one thing, but unless you just dangle them from a rope from the floor above and, have them do their work. But what's the mechanism that you all use for this exterior work?
Well, when an owner replaces a window of this type, it's going to typically be done from the inside.
And how would you caulk it?
A lot of these are self-sealing and don't have a full, they don't use, these windows probably would not use a full caulk bead. It's not like a NP1 caulk bead around the exterior. We would have to get Pella's installation instructions to confirm for this model how they would do that.
Jeff, I installed mine on my house, and yeah, you can do it from the inside. You pop the sashes out, and you get a lot of space to work. So I think so. I do think it would be good that I recognize, Ron, you said that the condo association should come up with their own standard, but I just want to say that I think the last application I think developed a good standard, which was the off-white, and then using the applied muttons with a spacer bar between the glass. I think what James and Jody have said, an interior storm window would be a great solution to this. I would strongly recommend, recommend against exterior storm windows as a solution, because they really, already the exterior facade it's great that it's a big building, so you don't notice, but when you look, the windows are a lot of different types, and the storm windows are not doing any favors for the building. That's my 2 cents. I don't know what others, if you guys want to add to that.
So would you have a motion basically saying to repair the windows and install interior storm windows? Would that be satisfactory?
Would deny this application.
Okay.
Just wanted to throw out some extra.
Okay.
Others can make a different motion if you guys so choose. I just wanted to give the applicant some advice for, if someone does want to come before us again, they can at least start in the right place.
So having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the replacement of 4 windows at 500 Court Square does not satisfy the BAR's criteria and is not compatible with this property and other properties in the North Downtown ADC district. And for the following reasons, the BAR denies this application as submitted, that it does not meet the BAR guidelines and standards.
I'll second that.
Oh,
Whoever else said that. Yeah. Is it James? I don't know.
I have it as, was it Tim? Or-
no.
Tim got it.
Okay, it can be Tim.
Yeah, can you hold on the vote a second?
Yes.
Sure.
So just to remind everyone that a denial is appealable to council. And I have been strenuously reminded to be very clear about a reason for denial. Referring to the guidelines, if I may offer, what I heard is about the necessity of replacing it. And so I'm just looking at the 24 items in the recommendations. And my suggestion would be to take a second, and I could share this, and to cite which conditions of the guidelines.
So I can do that, Jeff. Conditions C1, C2, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
C1 is doing a survey first of existing windows to note the number of the windows, whether each window is original or replaced. C2 is retain original windows when possible.
Also 7, replace entire windows only when they are missing or beyond repair.
Good, I like it.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did the advice that I provided for, if a window is beyond repair, does that make sense to everyone? And Doug, did that make sense to you?
Yes, definitely makes sense.
Great.
Very clear.
And I know you have a motion to vote on. I think that's understood. It's how that is demonstrated to the BAR by an applicant that's the difficulty.
So Tim, does your second still stand?
Yes.
Okay. With that, I'll go ahead and call a vote. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Mr. McClure,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
and Miss Lewis.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes 9-0,
And
which means that the application is, yeah.
right, the motion for denial passes. And if Doug is still on the line, but we certainly will send out a memo tomorrow, a denial, well, any action of the BAR, in fact, but an applicant may appeal that within 10 days of the BAR decision. There is a process to that. There is an application. There is a fee. So so that just everyone's clear on that, but for the record. So thank you all.
Doug, did you have any more questions for us about windows, or I'm sorry you had to join us for us to deny the application, but I feel like it was, I'm hoping at least you can get some information from us.
No, at all your expense, and it's been super helpful for me. Very, very helpful. So it's going to help guide our condo association and the board and et cetera. So very, very helpful.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, Doug, just you know where to find me, and let's talk as frequently as necessary. We have this building. There's also the Altamont apartments that are another old building with old windows in it. So we certainly want to be working with you, and I think some sort of overall assessment of the building itself and the windows would be probably get us a long way. All right,
Yep.
that's all.
That's great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Doug.
Bye.
Good luck.
Jeff, you had some questions for us?
I did. And I'm gonna, sorry, I'm again doing this. I'm gonna send some, Robert, I'm gonna forward to you an email if you can put it up on the screen. What? Come on. Send. So the first question I had was regarding the Water Street Inn, or South Street, Water Street, South Street. Let me find my thing. And I sent that all out to you all today, or yesterday. So back in, I think it was a year ago when the 108, 110, there was a whole series of things that came in, Keith Woodard's building down there, and there were the windows on the side, the windows on the back. And then there was also the request relative to cutting down some trees on the property. And kind of a funny parcel line, some of the trees were actually kind of growing out from underneath Mr. Woodard's building, and then some were on the property of the South Street Inn. So we approved, the BAR approved the removal of those 4 trees. And I sent it in the email. Then the motion included a recommendation that they develop a landscape plan and bring it back to the BAR. So I've been working with the builder that's doing a lot of just work on that house, and they're approaching the landscaping stage. And so they wanted to know how to move forward. They said, well, we were asked to bring this back, not a requirement. So as I noted in the email, that when we've had some things of this nature, I have kind of with the consent of the chair, there's times I've approved things of a landscape nature. It's not affecting the house, not affecting the property necessarily. It's not altering a historic landscape. But I wanted to just kind of get a sense from you all what you thought of this. I said it was your recommendation that they bring this back to you, and that's what they contacted me about. And if you had any questions or is there anything unclear? And one of the things that you all had, you had asked for particular types of trees, and there's one existing tree that's sort of opened up because of it. The tree out front, there's the power line runs, the utility line is right there, and they went with that Cloud 9 dogwood, which is actually recommended for underneath utility lines. So it wasn't necessarily able to kind of produce that. You all asked for some street trees or some large size trees. And so what do you think? Is this, they've honored what the recommendation was, the request from BAR? Is this something you want to see as a formal request? Give me your thoughts.
I think because it was a recommendation,
Yeah, a little weird.
We get what we get.
Now that was about the trees. There's obviously a lot of hardscape going on here.
Yeah, this is a significant hardscape. That's my, and this is contributing structure. I mean, I don't know that there's going to be that much debate about it, but given the scale of the project and the significance of the building, it seems like it should go to the board, even if it ends up on the consent agenda.
Okay. Yeah, was that our recommendation that you bring it back to us? Like, ooh, kind of, they brought it back. I don't disagree. And it's probably something I can get them to turn around quickly. And I apologize. I mean, you have to really zoom in on this drawing to get to where you can read it. So, you know, they're doing a lot down there. It's kind of nice to see it happening. And all right, that was that question. And I guess, well, what I ask is, so they've got, I don't know, these blood good Japanese maple. Yeah. So, I mean, does that kind of meet that criteria? They're vegetating the backyard. They're not putting in street trees. At the front, there is no, because of the utility line, there just isn't a whole lot of opportunity for a large scale street tree. So I just want to make sure that there was no, you know, from you all that had looked at this before, no real angst about that.
I will say, for context, you cannot see the backyard anymore because they replaced the fence, and I think it got taller. Probably about 20 feet tall right now. It looks brand new and nice, but it is a wall.
All right. Yeah, I think the railroad activity and
yeah,
as they said, some of what's going on the south side of the railroad, just trying to create a place. Yeah, correct. All right, that's that one.
Can I ask a quick thing? Should we request along with that they, you know, suggest if they're going to do any lighting back there, or is it just gonna be fairy lights? You know, is there anything that we need to be concerned about there lighting wise?
I think, you know, I'm going to ask them to bring this forward, and then I'll you know, there'll be certainly from this plan view, there will be things I'll ask them for some information on it. And yes, always the first thing I ask about is lighting. So no problem there.
Okay. Just trying to be fair about it too, because we're asking out of everybody these days. So I want to be sure.
I understand it. And now, okay, then I just received a question about the Jefferson School. And the reason I'm asking this is, you know, this gets into these interpretations of what, like asking earlier, what's a tent? Or, you know, and, you know, there in the thing that Robert should be able to pull up, they're asking about putting in an awning at the Jefferson School. I'm allowed administrative review of the addition or deletion of awnings, canopies, storm windows, storm doors, gutters, and similar appurtenances. I think the intent there was the idea being like the, you know, little canopies over an ATM or something like that. I wouldn't be uncomfortable at all approving something like this. What I tend to look for when someone asks me, you know, if I can okay it, is, are you making a hole in the wall? Are you plugging up? You know, are you changing that building? And in this case, I would say they're not. So I would be comfortable. But I guess asking you all to, you know, do you interpret this as an awning or a canopy?
Is this going to be associated with Pearl Island?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, this just came in this evening, but and this is, you know, a good example. I think why we, you know, have to have some good conversations about, and when we have time, and maybe we just have to wait until we're all back in one room, but kind of go over the things that I am okay saying move forward on, and then where we getting kind of these gray areas. And while this one came in this evening, I figure I would ask you all what you think. Not saying I can approve it or you approve it. Just
it looks simple and elegant to me.
Yeah, I also think it seems rather reversible, and that should also be something you can kind of use your judgment on. If it's very reversible, then it doesn't do a long-term detrimental effect to the historic resource.
It looks like there are poles that are along the wall surface, right?
That would be, yeah. Now, if it were a fabric awning, you know, it would be attached to the wall, but I tend to, when I see things near bricks, I ask questions, you know, and you know, the thing would be, is this independent and floating? And James, thank you. Yeah, reversible. That's the first thing. You know, so all right, I would be very comfortable approving this as an awning or a canopy, and saying no plastic, no vinyl wrapping, no vinyl shower curtain going around it. All right, I won't belabor the question.
Can I say, from my perspective, given the sort of the clarity of this building, that this is a case where it'd be more appropriate to have umbrellas or something like that. I think not. I mean, I agree that this is a freestanding structure, so that is certainly means it's less damaging, shall we say? But I mean, and ideally, the trees one day will be big enough that it would work fine. But it just seems not 100% to my mind in terms of the building type, all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I mean, if all of a sudden it's another one next to it, another one next to it, another one next to it, you have to sort of call for it to stop at some point, and I guess that's just where you all kind of count on my judgment to
you approve tents, or do we have to see them?
Yes and no. When it's in the backyard and someone will call me and say, my piece of my fence fell down, I say, well, what's the rest look like? And they'll say, well, it's going to look like this. Fine.
But not fence, tents.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said fence.
Yeah.
Tents there is a provision that allows the seasonal approval. And it's sort of like cafe furniture.
Yeah.
We can say, yeah, as long as you follow the rules, you're good to go. It's when they become permanent or on the mall that you all do have purview to review it.
I mean, this is kind of a tent, and it's kind of going to be there. But
yeah,
I don't want to. I'm fine with letting you have administrative approval for that.
All right. Maybe we need Robert, add that to our list. We need a kind of a graphic definition of this is a tent, this is a pavilion, this is a pergola.
As long as you don't as long as you don't ask me to do the graphics.
Yeah, just so that we're a little bit clear on what these pieces and parts are. And I think I'm not going to belabor any more of this. Where's my agenda?
Lighting at the standard.
Yeah, and I said I haven't received. It's kind of what we talked about at the pre-meeting. They haven't given me any further information about their work. But as soon as we know something, we'll all go and take a look at it separately. And place update. Carl, by the way, you're on the comp plan committee, correct?
Yeah.
I know things are starting to come together.
Yeah. It seems like Jody always knows more about it than I do. But, yes. What are we doing right now? We're looking at God, my mind is gone.
That's all right.
Jody has kept us updated. Thank you, Jody.
Yeah, but Jody doesn't remember how he updated you.
Yeah. No, I'm just expressing that I just want to make sure we don't lose. And I received an internal, I guess, version of what they've asked staff to look at. But so I don't want to, speak too out of school.
The last thing that has gone on is they're currently working through the map of for the comp plan.
The land use map.
Land use map, yes. And the zoning rewrite is coming up quickly.
Okay. All right. Because I did share with Jody that I think some of the, we need the maps to show the historic districts, the historic sites and things like that, so that that's accounted for. I just want to make sure that that good urban design and the historic preservation stuff we do isn't becomes subordinate to so many other things that it becomes meaningless, and that's what we need to just watch out for. All right, and other than that, the place update, if there is one.
All I really know is that the place seems to be wrestling with council's decisions regarding the West Main corridor, and basically it's been dropped down to option 1, and so mostly discussions of like undergrounding utilities and not a whole lot more than that. So all that, the irony of West Main, of course, was the primary objective of that project was a soup to nuts project where we didn't just get a bunch of studies done, but we actually got CDs and, just trying to make a city project that actually went all the way through and didn't just stall out at some level and become the 40th study of the same thing. But it seems to be heading in that direction. So, and then I haven't really heard anything on the Belmont Bridge lately, but I'm sure it's floating out there.
Start construction soon.
I think they're manufacturing that knuckle.
Yeah, the knuckle.
The knuckle.
I saw an RFP come out from the city on it.
It's actually
what part was that?
I think they opened bids the other day, but I again, I apply my landmark hotel principle to it, and I pay attention only when necessary. It's funny, for the longest time I didn't know. I thought the knuckle was something else, so I head down on that one. But I do know that they've apparently bids have come in, and so things are moving forward. So any day now we'll be asked to look at what the next light fixture should be, because the one, I don't know.
We'll get our site visit to look at those wall panels.
Oh God, yeah.
Do an outside walk around.
It's we have you don't know, Sherry, but we have a special BAR rope, and everybody holds onto their little knot, and
we'll let Robert lead it since he's new.
Can we take it up to the street right now and go to Court Square Tavern after the meeting?
Yeah, that's the important part. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So I did have to say, Jeff, in the middle of the Northwood discussion, you took a swipe at EcoStar synthetic slate roofs. I don't know what that was about.
We did?
Because they are allowed under our guidelines, but I encourage anybody to go by my house. I have them, and I've had them for 16 years now, and I think you'd be impressed. And I don't have a big imposing house, 809 2nd Street Northeast. I don't have a big.
Say that publicly, Sherry?
Honestly, I'm impressed with them, and they really have. They've stood up. I wasn't sure, whether they'd fly off. They hadn't been around that long in 2005 when I installed them. I had to drive out to the county to look at houses that had them. But yeah, Jeff. So there.
Oh no, I
by my house.
It's like that. It's like almost so uniform, and it's like mine.
Mine's not.
Jeff, have you ever seen a new slate installation? It's incredibly uniform.
When it's done right. Yeah.
Hey, Sherry, what's the brand name of your?
Mine is EcoStar, which was kind of the only thing that was available at the time.
EcoStar. Okay, thank you. It's good to know, because there's so many bad faux slate products.
A
lot of them curl. Yeah, a lot of them curl.
That's what I was concerned with. I'm not saying it's perfect 16 years later, but it has performed much better than I thought. And I've got.
I heard you say it was perfect.
And I have a hip roof, so we've got some whatever. I'm so tired. Thank you, Ridgecrafts.
Oh, you're channeling Jeff Dreyfus, are you?
There's a theme here, Sherry.
Yeah, I can't afford to fix my roof. I don't know what to do. It's it's a 35. What's that?
The blue tarps.
Blue tarp, yeah. Now it's $35,000 to replace my standing.
I just get some 30-pound roll felt and go for it, Jeff.
I know how it works. You get some cinder blocks up there and just paint them.
No, you take a stapler and you take string and you string it along the edge and you staple it. It works great.
We'll need a picture of that for the guidelines. All right, everyone. And I don't know. I think Robert, new Robert's still on here, but
do we know? Do we know?
Did you say
Jeff?
something, Jeff?
For a freeze?
Maybe it's
Yeah.
time to adjourn. Robert, you're coming back next month, right?
I'll be back.
Yeah.
Robert, you're allowed to talk,
No, Robert, just to check, you had access to all of the packet and the agenda and all of our materials, didn't you?
I'm not sure if I received the packet, but
Oh no. Okay. We'll make sure you have it next time. Yeah. Well, sorry that you didn't have, I guess, all of the materials throughout the whole meeting, but you will next time. So
You were better off for it.
yeah.
It's
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah,
It
maybe.
is. Fake it till you make it. All right, y'all. Thank you very much. This
I
was.
move we adjourn.
Yep. Everything looked good tonight.
Second.
Thank you all. Have a good
Welcome,
evening.
Hey, everybody.
All
Nice
right,
to meet you, Robert.
you